Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, Tyvis Powell, Jason Lloyd. Plus, ba-da-da-da-da, you're loving him, Mikey McNuggets. And so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show starts now. Booyah!
Hey, I'm back, baby! What's going on?
Welcome back, Bull.
Hey,
Welcome back.
Thank you. Mikey McNuggets, G. Bush.
Your vocal cords is real strong right now.
I'm feeling good. I had the most relaxing, fun week plus
Who'd you
maybe
argue
of my life.
Who'd you argue with is what I'm curious. You were in a house with, what, 8 other people?
I argued with Anthony when I called in and
Tuesday.
he hung up on me.
That was great. That was
can't
funny.
happen
That was
on
very
you
funny.
today.
That
Anthony,
was
well
funny.
played. Well played.
I didn't even realize. It's hard to tell when you're a guest, like when you're off.
When you're done, yeah.
So I think I kept talking for like 15 seconds after he cut me off, which was funny. So I watched a little of the show. I watched a little of the show on Friday. I argued. Well, I did. I mentioned.
You argue with the 2 people at
I
spring
argued
training.
with 2 people at the ballpark. I was really pissed.
Did you just find them? You're like, oh, this is a good couple.
They found him, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it was.
They called you out?
Well, you weren't there.
No, it was me, Earl, and Tyvis.
Oh, okay. So I'll tell the story real quick for those who may have missed it. And by the way, we got a lot on today's show. Anthony's producing today. Earl is here, of course. Steve is, I don't know what the hell Steve's doing. He's just pushing buttons there. He's a trained
He
monkey
pushes
back
buttons.
there.
That's about all he does.
But we're going to get to the Cavs in just a couple of minutes. Obviously, that game was wacky and wild. Free agency starting. Could Joe Flacco be back? All of it coming up. But real quick, so I went to a spring training game last Monday. It was the Blue Jays and the Pirates, and there's 8 of us at the game. So I had bought good seats because it was 4 kids. I wanted them to be like real up close and get good view. The problem was we were baking in the sun. It was so hot.
You were in Florida, to be expected.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I don't know, whatever. So by the end of the second inning, the kids could barely, sit. So I was like, okay, we're moving to the back of the stadium, and spring training stadiums aren't that big. It's like a minor league stadium. So I said, we're going to go from the good seats to the bad seats, which are still good. We're going to go sit in the back, sit in the shade. We'll find some empty seats. So we go back there, and it's taken us a little bit of time because there's 8 of us to find the exact spots to sit. And this couple is sitting there, and they're getting agitated that we haven't all sat down yet. And the guy had an attitude. And I'm like, and at first I was like, okay, we're blocking him, I get it. But then he starts making, so I let it go initially. And then we sat down, and the guy's like, oh, it's about time. So I got up out of my seat. I walked, because he was sitting 2 seats behind me. I walked over to the guy, and I'm like, what is your effing problem? It's spring training. We were blocking your view for like a minute. I know we didn't do it on purpose. It was a little confusing, blah, blah, blah. And he, as I said the other day, I'll use the word again. He wanted none of that smoke.
No smoke. Hey, what are you talking about? I was talking about the pigeons.
Not interested.
I was talking about the pigeons. They were on the roof.
Exactly. Now, listen, I'm not going to lie. If I thought that guy could kick my ass, I wouldn't have probably done it.
You wouldn't have wanted no smoke.
Because I'm old.
Right.
When I was 20, the guy could be twice my size. I would have gone for it. But I'm 52, so I'm going to pick and choose. I knew this guy was going to be no issue if anything came to it, and so I was pissed.
Yeah, fair.
And then he didn't say anything the rest of the day.
Okay.
So that was that. But then later, I'm explaining some of the things because the other family we're with, it's all girls and then one little boy, right? And so they don't and they're not a family that's into sports.
Don't know nothing.
So I'm explaining some of the things of baseball, and this woman turns around. She was like a 50-year-old woman. She's wearing these headphones that are like from the 70s.
Listen
These
to
giant
Tom
headphones.
Hamilton. Got to get your Tom Hamilton.
Exactly. But I don't know. Are the Guardians broadcasting these games on the radio in Florida?
Yeah.
They are, all of them? Okay. I guess
think
that.
so.
But she turns around and she goes, "Can you? I appreciate your knowledge of the game, but can you please stop talking?" And I'm like, I wasn't even like, I know I can be loud. Trust me, I understand I'm loud. But for me, I was at a normal level, which is louder than most people, but not outrageously loud. I wasn't yelling or anything. And I was like, what the? She had her headphones. So I didn't. It's a woman. I'm not going to say anything. But I'm thinking like, well, get some noise-canceling headphones if you want to be at a baseball game and listen to Tom Hamilton. Is that fair?
You cannot be at a sporting event
Yeah.
and have climate control and noise and volume control. Listen, if you wanted to have it nice and quiet, and you wanted to wear your radio headphones and look like you're strange slightly in your home, do that. But anytime you get up in that public eye, you can't be asking people to be quiet or could you guys sit down and you're sitting in the student section.
Right. I don't understand.
Now, I will say that woman had the gumption to say what a lot of us have thought before, which is, well, please stop talking for once. But that was not the appropriate place and time to do that.
But that was it. Besides that, there was no arguing. I mean, I did help contribute to potentially save a life on the flight back, I'll tell you that.
Did you have to give mouth-to-mouth or the Heimlich?
I did not, thankfully. But as we're landing, you know how you have the baggage up on top?
Yeah.
One of the doors to the baggage comes flying open as we're landing. So you're not supposed to get up. So this guy, it was right across the row from me. So this guy behind, like one back and one over behind me, he was a really tall guy. He gets his hands up to hold it. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of baggage, and there was an old woman sitting right across from me. And I'm like, this woman's going to get killed. She's going to get hit by a bag's going to fall on her. Who the hell knows what's happened? So the guy's holding it. So I take off my seatbelt as we're landing. And I'm like, I got to get involved here. I got to help. And I get up as we're landing. And by the way, I get motion sickness. I got to take Dramamine. So me getting up on a landing is risky that I'm going to be throwing up.
That plane was like,
there's a wobbling side to side.
So I get up and I'm like trying to slam the door closed, but it won't close. It won't close. So I'm like, dude, can you hold? He's like, I got to sit down. Can you hold it?
He's like, dang, I thought you was getting up for a good reason. I only had 35 seconds.
That's right. And then eventually we pulled the bag out of there and we're able to close it.
Well, I do have two stories. By the way, I went and I think Earl hyped me up for this one.
Yeah.
I took my parents to Sweet Port Wilson's.
Oh, you did?
Man,
listen.
Full spot.
Bull went. He said, yeah, your man Bull was here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I was there.
Then he said Earl was there. I said, oh, hell no.
Oh, nice.
They crept up in there without me. So I go in there. It was better than I remembered. The greens was crazy. Sweet Port Wilson's, I'm telling you what, if you want a great experience, go down there. They brought me in the kitchen, showed me how they make certain stuff.
Nice.
It was crazy. It was. They got this new turkey that tastes like ham. I don't know how they do it. Yeah. They got this barbecue chicken that's crazy.
I got the chicken thigh.
That's the one.
I had not had it before. It was phenomenal.
I was like, how is it? I was going crazy.
It's the best barbecue in Cleveland, no doubt.
Get the cornbread again?
Yeah, of course.
Cornbread's just
he mentioned a bunch of things. Cornbread, had to make sure to didn't skip it.
The cornbread's
out of this world.
And then that's right. I don't think Earl didn't come with us.
Earl didn't come.
He did, but he came back. He said Earl was here. And I got one more thing. Shout out to my brother's occupational therapist. My brother's having a little trouble. You know what I'm saying? My brother's actually learning how to walk again.
Which brother?
My middle brother.
Oh, why?
So he had a back injury. And so he has an occupational therapist, and a shout out to Rob. He's a big fan of the show. He said, shout out to Rob. So, hey, man, you push my brother. Don't be taking no stuff. He be trying to slack. Tell him he's a former football player.
Man. Let's go.
You got to push. You got to get on his feet by the summer. So shout out to Rob, and shout out for, to the things you do for the people that's trying to get back mobile.
All right, maybe more stories later. Mike, we've said our things. You got anything?
Shout out to the Cavs.
Did you get engaged in the last 24 hours? No, I heard there was talk about that.
24 hours. No, but shout out to the Cavs for real.
Shout out. Yeah, we'll get to that right now. First, say hi to Anthony.
Hey, good morning, everybody. The Cavs game last night was awesome, but before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys that you can get buckets just like the Cavs did with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if you win. Plus, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost tokens in the app and use it for the UNC Duke game. Profit Boost tokens will be available before the big game. You can view in your account page now to learn more about the boost. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
So yesterday, Anthony texted me and said, you've been off for a while. Is there anything specifically you want to talk about? And I said, I want to chime in on the Cavs because I know from, I wasn't watching every day, but I watched some of the shows. And I know that especially Jay and G and Earl have been just killing the Cavs, deservedly so. They've been playing lousy basketball. They lost. They got blown out by the Knicks, who are not. By the way, the Knicks aren't playing that well, really, but they crushed the Cavs. And obviously, the only wins they had besides that crazy Dallas win was against really awful teams. I think in Detroit and Washington, who's lost like 80 in a row.
Yeah.
So I'm like, those guys have been killing them. I said, maybe I should come on and like, I don't think it's that bad. It's just a bad stretch or whatever. And then the Cavs are down 22 in the fourth quarter. I'm like, forget that. It's going to be a disaster tomorrow. But then the Dean Wade show, guys. What the hell was that?
Listen, this is the second Tuesday in a row a Cavs player has gone 5 for 5 from 3 in the fourth quarter to lead them to some miraculous comeback. The only two players in the NBA this season to shoot 100% from deep in the fourth quarter of a game this season on a minimum of 5 attempts. Strus last Tuesday, Wade last night. It makes no sense. Being there for both of those games, you could feel the energy in the arena just kind of creep up a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more until it was a full-on Cavalanche. And the most impressive thing about Dean Wade, and he outscored the Celtics by himself, 20-17. He was perfect from the field. He was 1 for 4 in the first 3 quarters, by the way.
Yeah, 3 points.
3 points.
Yeah.
2 rebounds. He had 6 rebounds and 20 points in the fourth by himself.
Yeah.
But the most impressive part about Wade is he is always in the right spot at the right time. And we talk about the little things in basketball that don't necessarily show up on a stat sheet. And no, he can't rebound like Andre Drummond. Last night he shot like Larry Bird, but he's not a Larry Bird-esque shooter. He's a solid shooter.
Forget Larry Bird. He was Klay Thompson last night.
He was Steph Curry. I mean, Steph can't shoot 5 for 5. He can't shoot better than he did last night. But if you watch some of these plays here, and you can see the spot shot on a few of them, he's always in the right spot, and he makes the smart play. Like, this is a little roll here, and Drew Holiday couldn't help off because Sam Merrill's in the corner. I know a lot of people were like, Sam Merrill only had 6 points. Well, just by him being on the court, you have help drawn your way. Here he takes another step up to get a better passing angle from Darius Garland behind Drew Holiday. He's in the right spot at the right time. And in the fourth quarter, it was one of those magical experiences where no matter what Boston did defensively, no matter what happened on the first 21 seconds of the possession for Cleveland, Dean Wade was there to bail them out when it mattered most, including the putback dunk where he sneaks by 4 different Celtics defenders. That was the only shot they missed in the fourth quarter in the last 9 minutes, by the way. The Cavs down the stretch were 11 of 12 from the field, and that miss, which led to the Dean Wade putback, was their only miss. The Celtics, in their own right, collapsed in the fourth quarter, but give the Cavaliers all the credit in the world for taking what Boston gave them, for locking up defensively, including Darius Garland on that last play against Jason Tatum, and kudos to the refs for swallowing their whistle. And they didn't swallow it, but then coming back and making the right decision.
They got that reversal.
That's what I'm saying, but they challenged it, and then they made the right decision, which was clearly the right call. Right. But the Cavs, when it mattered most, went to a 1-in, 4-out lineup. Dean Wade became Larry Wade, or Dean Bird, whatever you want to call him. And it was a magical 12 minutes of basketball last night.
The vanilla.
Did you think, by the way, either of you guys think that they were going to overturn that call? Even though it looked like.
I didn't think so, no.
Because I feel like they don't in those situations. I was surprised.
I thought that they've been overturning a lot of stuff lately that I'll be seeing.
They have done a pretty good job about that, by the way.
Yeah.
But
that's good.
Still, in the last second of the game, you're always hesitant. You always have that feeling in your gut, like, this is not a foul, but it's not going to go our way.
Right.
I'm going to tell you what, man, listen. Man. See, I was in the middle about, you know me, I already got my tweets already ready to be fired up. My joints was already scheduled for the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, the Vanilla Wolf himself.
The Vanilla Wolf, oh my God.
The Vanilla Wolf, Dean Wade, comes through. Woo! He's just howling. Bro, this dude, I said, he hit one of them. I said, no, listen, he act like he knew that was going in. He shot that second one. I said, listen, he might get hot like Strus. By the time he hit the third one, it was NBA Jams. I got the NBA Jams tournament edition on the arcade coming to the house. And it was like, he's on fire, Dean Wade. And then all of a sudden, he comes out of nowhere with the putback dunk. Yeah. I said, he's having the best year of his freaking life. His brothers are in the stands, the Kelsey brothers.
And he's a big Chiefs fan, by the way. He's from Wichita, huge Chiefs fan. And after the game, I don't know if you guys saw him in the locker room.
His people.
Dean Wade said, I talked to Travis after the game. He said, hey, if basketball doesn't work out, We need a backup tight end. You can take my spot after. That's a pretty.
Plus, man, Joey Chestnut eating 1,000 pierogies.
Yeah, that was and he started out. I don't know if they said this on the broadcast. They didn't know. No one knew that was the halftime entertainment yesterday.
That was supposed to go against Jason Kelsey. What happened?
I don't know about that, but have you ever been to a Cavs game and they play the Hungry Hippos game?
Yes.
Joey Chestnut ate every one of the Hungry Hippos. He was the green hippo. And then afterwards they go, let's talk to the winner. And it's Joey Chestnut announcing he's going to take on 3 random fans in a pierogi eating contest. It was an awesome
greatest marketing game the Cavs have ever had.
Genius.
They just, how do you have all 3 of them? And Dean Wade comes up and shows up, hits some jumpers.
And one last thing with Wade, and then we'll let you go. Not only did he have 7 shots, made all 7, 5 threes, he had 2 assists, both to George Niang, who we've been crushing George Niang, and he deserves some credit. He had 2 killer, crucial threes in the fourth quarter along top of Dean Wade. They were 8 of 8 from 3. Okoro hit a 3, Niang 2, Wade 5. Every little play you could have asked for, he made. And coming off their worst loss of the season against New York, this was their best one of the season.
And you just said it. What's the difference? 1 in, 4 out.
We're going to get
more into that in a sec.
And what happened with Mobley in a minute. But I wonder what we're always talking about sports books, right? We talk about the FanDuel sports book, and there's odds for everything. But I don't think there were any odds, because I don't know. They would have to have been 1,000,000 to 1, 10 million to 1.
Sam Merrill made the FanDuel, but Vanilla Wolf was nowhere to be found.
Well, but what would the odds have been on Dean Wade scoring 20 points in a quarter in the fourth quarter against the Celtics?
He has
to 10 million to 1.
20,000. He has to be, and I mean this with all due respect, Dean Wade. He has to be the worst player in NBA history to score 20 points in the fourth quarter.
You would think
of a close game, of a not blowout.
Right. Like you would think. I mean, I don't know, but you've talked a lot about how he does a lot of the little
the little stuff,
and that's why he gets minutes, right? He's not great at any of the obvious things, at any of the statistical things, but last night he was. But for him to be just such a non-factor in the game for 3 quarters and then get that opportunity in the fourth quarter and take advantage of it. He said after the game, the basket looked like a swimming pool.
Yeah, I believe it.
Right? I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, how many guys have gone 5 for 5 from 3 in a quarter period? Well, you said only 2 this year.
In the fourth quarter. Only 2.
I mean, it probably doesn't happen a lot. I mean, how many times has Steph Curry done that in his career? 5 for 5 in the fourth quarter from 3.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a very rare feat, and it's the accuracy. It's one thing to make 5 threes if you take 10, 11 shots, which it's very difficult to get 11 3-point attempts, but to go 5 of 5, and also, the first 2 were when they were still down. I think the first one was when they were down 22. The second one, but the last 2, the putback dunk, the pass to Niang, like these are in the most critical moments of the game. And one thing we talked about Dean Wade last year in the postseason series against New York, that guy you see on the screen crumble. They let go of Kevin Love because this was the guy they were hopeful could step up and make the shots in the postseason. Did not deliver. Against New York on Sunday, he didn't deliver in the crunch time moments. Last night against Boston, when the lights were the brightest, when it mattered the most, number 32.
Well, it matters the most in the playoffs. But
to this point, but in last night's game, when it mattered most, the Vanilla Wolf was impeccable. You can't play better than he did last night.
He was even better than the Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
Vanilla Wolf, greater than the Teen Wolf.
Was a cheese ball. I mean, and what's, with Milwaukee obviously has been red hot. They won, I think, 6 in a row.
Yeah.
And so that was big because all of a sudden, if you lose that game, now you're a game and a half behind Milwaukee for the 2 seed. Now you're only, especially when you got Minnesota coming up on Friday, I think.
And then Phoenix on Monday.
So you got some tough games. Even Atlanta's not a pushover.
Atlanta just beat the Knicks by 16.
They talk about this though. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth, right? It's very easy to do, but it's sort of a faux pas. I don't like hypocrisy, right? This was a terrible loss for the Celtics. The Celtics have been looking like they were the team to beat. If you go look and see how they emasculated the Golden State Warriors and Steve Kerr, they've been putting people out of their misery early. They blew the Knicks out in New York. Now they come into this game, they are full strength. They got Porzingis back. They're ready to go. They were dominating this game for 3 quarters.
How many have they won in a row before?
They won 11 in a row. Their average margin of victory on that 11-game win streak was nearly 23 points per game. They had 4 wins of that stretch of 30 or more points.
Right.
They had straight up blown
I get what you're saying. It is a bad loss in a vacuum, but in the grand scheme of the season, they're by far the best team in the league right now.
Yes, they are. So when I go back and I examine this, I say, okay, well, the Cavs lost to the Knicks, and the Knicks had 4 starters out.
Yeah.
So the Celtics, who look like the best team in the league, they lose to the Cavs, Evan Mobley's not in the game. You don't have a Donovan Mitchell. No Strus. And so basically you got role players and Jared Allen and Darius Garland, and both those guys struggled last game. So it just goes to show you, I still don't like getting embarrassed. I still don't like getting blown out. But in the game of basketball, yes, there are some things that can happen that are like from night to night. You're like, whoa, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And teams, I don't want to say play down to competition, but it's natural human nature. Now, the Celtics should have won that game last night.
Yeah.
If you hit 11 of 12 shots and you essentially make the one you missed because it was a putback dunk, like you should win that game every time. But the Celtics, what they did in the first 3 quarters to build that lead, they went away from the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We talked about Joe Mazzulla and where you rank the NBA Eastern Conference coaches. Like, that's a big issue for the Celtics. It's not the talent, it's Mazzulla. But back to the Cavs last night. I just want to say 2 more things before we talk about Mobley.
Yeah.
We talked on the show yesterday how after New York, Gene, you weren't here. I was like, I need to see some sort of fight. Like, I can't see you lie down against a team that is as good as Boston, as talented as Boston. And New York may have your number, but at least in the regular season, the Cavs have had Boston's number the last 2 seasons. You go back to last year in the regular season, they had the overtime win here in Cleveland. Obviously, last night, it's a team that they don't fear necessarily when you go up in the matchup. And last night was as gritty, as tough, and as frankly awe-inspiring of a performance we've seen from this team all year long. And we got on JB for saying, what the hell, how could you admit your team took its foot off the gas when Brunson went down in the first quarter? Well, if we're going to say that, we do got to give him some credit yesterday for rallying the troops and finding the right lineup at the end.
Yeah. Well, having D Wade in the game, I mean.
And it helps, and that was my second point. The lineup that they went with to kind of close the game was Wade, Allen, Niang, LeVert, and Garland. If you had told me a Curl wouldn't be in that 5, I'd be like, nah, he has to be.
Right.
But last night, they found a lineup that worked.
Well, you weren't taking Wade out.
He stuck with it. No, he stuck with it. And it was incredible.
What did that ref say over there?
And by the way, for anyone real quick, because I was there last night, the Kelseys were as engaged as any fan in the arena from the second they sat down. The pictures, like,
hey, they're still from Cleveland.
That's not a faux pas. Like, they were as engaged. They chugged beers. They were signing autographs, taking pictures.
None of that is surprising.
It was so cool to see them engaging with the fans in a way that I hoped they would.
Yeah.
But to actually see it in fruition, everything you hear about them totally checks out.
We know every Clevelander's a big-time sports fan, so even though they're professional athletes, or in Jason's case now a former professional athlete, you know they're going to be diehard about the other sports. One last thing before we get to Mobley. You know, I've complained, and I think a lot of older fans have often complained that the NBA now can be a little boring because every team, except for maybe Oklahoma City, kind of plays the same way, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of 3 points, a lot of chucking. But I'll give a kudos to our guy Anthony Lima because I saw him tweet about this.
He's right about this.
The one thing about all these threes is that it does lead to more comebacks. The games are never over.
You're never out of it.
Never. And like that felt like a game that, this is over. At the end of the third quarter. And it wasn't. All right. The negative.
His stat, by the way, the Lima stat that you're referencing, there have been 27 20-point comebacks this season. There were 30 all of last season, and that was a new NBA record.
In 1990, there was 0, I think.
They're on pace to shatter the record for 20-point comebacks. That was Anthony Lima's stat. You can find it on Twitter.
Yeah, good job out of you, Lima. So let's talk about Evan Mobley, right? You need to read before we talk about Mobley?
Okay. No, you guys can go for it.
All right, so Mobley gets hurt in the third quarter. There's 2 aspects of the Mobley injury. One is the injury and what that means. I don't think we've gotten any updates yet today.
He left the arena in a boot last night.
Right.
Hayden Grove had a better look than I did. He said it looked like his ankle was a golf ball. Very swollen. Typically, I'm assuming it's a sprained ankle. We'll find out more from JB today.
There's different levels to sprained ankles.
But it looked like he sprained it from
so he's certainly not playing anytime soon.
I'm guessing a week to 2 weeks, if not more.
Yeah, right. So that's one part of this is the injury itself. The other part is the fact that it seems like it maybe wasn't coincidental. Not necessarily that it was Mobley, but just that they played their best basketball
with 4 shooters.
With 4 shooters and 1 big guy. Let's start with that aspect of it, guys. The fact that, coincidence or something to it?
Oh, there's definitely something to it.
Yeah.
And I have been pretty stronghold on the stance that in some capacity the Cavs' best lineup included Mobley and Allen. And I'm officially
He's changing. There you go.
On the win now, and it's partly because I had hoped and I had held steady in the stance that Mobley could develop into a 3-point shooter. But if you go back and you watch the end of the Knicks game, and I'll get to what we saw last night, There were multiple possessions late in the Knicks game, and we showed it on the show yesterday, where Evan Mobley's wide-ass open in the corner, and Darius Garland doesn't even look his way.
Yeah.
Meaning if Darius doesn't trust Evan to make that shot, he ain't shooting it. And in the playoffs, the pressure only ramps up.
Right.
And the spacing is so congested. You can make space with two bigs. And there's certainly ways to do it. But when the defense locks in, especially late in the game, I don't feel confident that the Cavaliers' best offensive option is with 4 feet, essentially, 2 for Allen, 2 for Mobley, 2 players, however you want to call it, around the paint. I want it as spaced out as possible. I want Donovan to have as much ability to drive without it being congested. I want the same for Darius. And I want 2 guys in the corner where their defenders can't help off for them to be able to kick out to in case they don't have a straight line drive. And at the point in time we are right now, Mobley doesn't make shots consistently enough. And hell, on Sunday, Dean Wade and Niang were unplayable because they didn't make shots. Last night they were phenomenal. There's a happy medium between the two. If Dean Wade and Niang are going to make 7 threes in the fourth quarter, they have to play, obviously. If they're 0 for 6 like they were against New York, well, you got a little different preposition at hand. But I am starting to teeter towards their best crunch time lineup includes 1 big and 4 shooters, and that's not how I felt leading up to.
Are you going to be on the bad list of the Cavs?
No, I think that's totally
Mafia?
fair. No, I think that's totally fair.
All right, G.
Hey, listen, you know.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean Mobley can't play. Mobley has a crucial, invaluable role on this team. I just don't know if you need a bucket, he's in the lineup you have on the court to get a bucket.
See, it's going to take some heart and it's going to take some foresight by JB. I don't know if he has the heart to do it. One of them got to come off the bench.
See, I disagree with that part of it.
Well, you just said you want to play one. You're saying at the end of the game.
At the end of the game.
Does it matter, though?
The starters, yeah, it's all about who ends the game. The starters.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think they could both be on the floor for major minutes at a time, right? Because when you look at it, this just so happens that you have a complete sample size. You watched in the beginning of that game. I don't even know who this guy was. I thought it was Tyler Zeller or something.
Luke Cornett.
But he
played great last night.
Oh, my gosh. He was looking like one of Shredder's foot soldiers. I'm like, where's this foot soldier coming from? He blocked everything moving. Darius Garland, get that out of here. Evan Mobley, he was blocking shots back to back to back. And I noticed, I'm like, how is he getting to all these? He was like, well, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are 4 feet away from each other. And neither one of them is comfortable shooting the 15 to 17-foot jumper consistently. And that's a bad shot now. Mm-hmm. They're letting them have it. And when Evan Mobley would get the ball around the arc, he's not even comfortable putting the ball on the ground that many dribbles, right? It's just, he does to me, and I've come to it. I don't know why we were fooled. You don't just get presence and awareness and awareness in space. He does not have the athleticism to play those positions. When you look at Wemby, when he does his Euro step, when he's crossing over, when he spins through, when he comes off the pick, he's comfortable with it. When Evan Mobley's got the ball in his hands, he's thinking, all right, well, where do I get this ball to? He doesn't have the skill set to take the ball from the three-point line, pump fake, and take 7 dribbles. 2-3 dribbles. He just don't have it. So you have to ask yourself, what's the best way to incorporate him? Well, obviously for me, it's splitting the two apart. Now, if you want Evan Mobley to be the unicorn, you go to Jared Allen and say, Jared Allen, you come off the bench, right? You're older. Listen, you shouldn't have – Jared Allen shouldn't have that much of an ego.
He doesn't. He literally has no ego.
So he has no – he do it coming off the bench. You split him up. Now, look, I still think you still have to split Garland, and you still got to split Donovan Mitchell. Now, you can have them start the game and have them finish the game. I'll agree with Mike. I'll take Darius Garland at the end if he can knock down some jumpers because you're going to go one in, 4 out. But for me, I think that this is going to show you in this next stretch for the 2-3 weeks, Evan Mobley is out before the playoffs. Yeah. You're going to see the Cavs get back to what the Cavs were doing before, and they'll look a lot better.
You know, Jason, over the last couple of years, not as much this year, but especially the last 2 years, or last year, I should say, often brought up the fact that, you know, Mobley hasn't necessarily had the chance to develop because when the Cavs made the trade for Donovan Mitchell, the focus of the team was different.
Timeline accelerated.
Right. You're trying to win. Okay, the Cavs are a half game behind Milwaukee for the 2 seed. They just beat the best team in basketball shorthanded. I understand they hadn't played well the last 2 weeks, but overall, since whenever their hot streak started in November,
the All-Star break.
No. When their hot streak started.
Oh, December.
Was it December?
December 16th.
Okay. Overall, for the last almost 3 months, 2.5 months, outside of 2 weeks before yesterday, they've played great basketball.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you get focused in on, for 7 games they played poorly. And they did. Mm-hmm. Even the best teams are going to be – Milwaukee looked like crap for a while. Now they're back to playing great.
But big picture,
they've been mostly an excellent team for 2.5 months. And they've mostly done it at their best, 1 in, 4 out. We can't worry about Mobley's development. When Mobley first came back from injury a month ago, whatever it was, we all were like, let him shoot. Well, now that's over.
Yeah.
Because now the playoffs are 6 weeks away, and he's hurt. So that's done.
You got to know what he can and can't do. There's no more experimentation.
Right. At this point, that's maybe a next year thing. Yep. We'll see. But I think I'm with you. The Cavs are going to be a better team, and their best chance to win in the playoffs is with Mobley and Allen not playing together. And that doesn't mean they can't play any minutes together, but for the most part, not playing together, and certainly not playing together at the end of games.
Yeah.
I think that means no Mobley at the end of games.
I agree.
Especially because the injury. We don't even know when he's going to be back.
Yeah.
If this is like a serious sprained ankle, he could miss the rest of the regular season.
Well, can I give you a little spin zone?
Yeah.
Now, you never want to see guys get hurt.
No.
And the timing of this injury is particularly frustrating because the next 20 games, we were hoping to get some sort of clarity or answers from JB on how he was going to utilize the 2 bigs, what their best lineups were. Now, depending on when Mobley's return is, we won't be able to find that out until there's 5-6 games left. And at that point, you better have your rotation figured out or else we got bigger issues. On the flip side, if you look at the Eastern Conference standings today, Cavs are the 3 seed. Do you know who's the 4 seed today?
Orlando.
Do you know who's the 5 seed today?
The Knicks.
And do you know who's the 6 seed?
Miami.
Philadelphia.
Oh, you sure?
As of this morning, yeah.
Okay.
But either way,
yeah.
My point is,
right.
There's so much shuffling of the deck in the Eastern Conference, and even 2 to 7, it's not that big of a gap. We all agree during that 18-2 stretch, no Mobley, no Garland for part of it. They were playing 4 out, 1 in. That was their best brand of prolonged basketball we had seen, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now with Mobley out, assuming Donovan can come back in the next couple games, and we got an update.
I'm not rushing him back.
We got an update from JB yesterday. He's going to miss the next 2, then they're going to reevaluate. When he was asked in the press conference directly yesterday, how long do you expect Mitchell to be out? He said, I hope not a month, which isn't the greatest thing you want to hear from a coach.
No, but there's certainly you don't want to rush him back.
But
you want him back before the end of the regular season.
I'm just saying there's no guarantee he's back in a week now.
Right.
It could be something longer. With Mobley on the sideline, if you're all under the agreement or the impression that their best lineup includes 1 big, they're going to have to win a bunch of these games against tougher teams in the regular season to stay afloat in the 2-3 spot, as opposed to falling into the 4-5 or
now
even God forbid the 6.
I believe they're 4 or 4.5 up on Orlando and the Knicks.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
But it could go away in a hurry when you're playing good teams.
So the fact that if you do think they're best suited playing 4 and 1 out, JB has no choice anymore. This is what we're going to see, and in the big picture of competing for home court advantage with hopefully the 2 seed, the 3 seed to avoid a potential matchup with Boston in the second round. So you got to hold on to one of those 2. Going 4 out, 1 in, because you're forced to right now. It's a slight spin zone if you think that's their best chance to win.
I think their best. So let's think about this, guys. Let's speculate ahead. Mm-hmm. Right now, their best lineup for closing games.
If everyone's healthy,
in my opinion, it's Garland, Mitchell, Allen, Okoro, and then I'm not sure who's the 5th guy. And do you agree with those 4?
Well, I think the tricky
part.
I think the tricky part for JB is going to be. I believe that every single night he's going to have to figure out who's his best lineup to finish the game.
Okay, so not necessarily.
Which is difficult.
Okoro, if you're winning, maybe it's Okoro. If you're losing, it's somebody else.
It's Garland, Mitchell, Allen. And then it's matchup dependent. If they have a guy that you need Isaac's defense on the perimeter for, if they have size, you can't go like Strus and Okoro could be those next 2 guys if you need size. maybe it's Wade or Niang. But it's those three, and then it's matchup dependent. Who is the hot hand?
But do we all agree Mobley should not be on the court at the end of games?
As of today,
today,
yes, I do.
And here's because I don't know many teams that have this. The Cavs have shown that they got 3 or 4 dudes that can hit 10 threes. Strus is hit 7, 8 threes. Dean Wade has hit 7 threes. You look at not only him, Merrill can hit 10 threes. George Niang has gotten hot and had 30 in playing and doing it. And then Karis LeVert is a guy who's got 50 in this league. Multiple times. So you got a lot of shooters, a lot of guys that come off the bench. And you saw Karis LeVert, being a distributor. He's the last, I'd say 6-7 games, he's been really distributing the ball and playmaking, creating, and all those things. I actually like it. I would give Donovan Mitchell mad games off. I don't care if he comes back in 15 games, whatever. And then now we could get Darius Garland. Let's see if we can get him to move the basketball.
Last thing, 30 seconds, Mike, before we move on to football. Is there a center out there in the free agent market at this point that's worth picking up with Mobley hurt? To play a few minutes here.
I liked Mike Muscala, but he just signed with OKC.
Okay, so there's nobody.
I'd have to look again, but he was the one center I thought kind of fit there.
We'll bring that up again. Yeah. Anthony, let's get to some football here.
Yeah, guys, before we switch over to football, I want to remind everybody that you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. And don't forget to be sure to check out the FanDuel Profit Boost tokens in the app. You can use them for the UNC Duke game. Profit Boost tokens will be available before the big game. You can view them in your account page, and you can learn more about your boost right now. You just have to visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Guys, free agency. It feels like it's coming quicker this year. It probably isn't, but maybe because the Browns went to the playoffs. I don't know.
Yeah, it does feel.
But free agency starts Monday.
Yeah.
I believe at noon is the beginning of the tampering period, and then Wednesday at 4, I think, is when guys can officially sign. But as we know, unlike baseball, in football, everything happens really in those first couple of days. So next week's going to be bonkers in terms of free agency. One thing I did not expect to read yesterday afternoon was an article by Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk where he said he's heard from sources that the Browns talked with Joe Flacco last week and that Flacco's first choice is to remain with the Browns. That was stunning to me. Now, maybe it means nothing, and maybe it's not going to happen. The reason I was surprised is because I got the sense that Joe thought he would have a chance to be a starter. Now,
he told us that on this very show.
Now, I don't buy that any team wants to go into the season, as well as Joe played. I don't think at his age there's going to be a team that wants to go into the start of the season with Joe as their starter. I do think there's probably a lot of teams now that would love to have Joe as a backup. And if Joe has got to the point, guys, where he's like, nobody's making me a starter. I'm not, Now, could you go to a team with a rookie quarterback and maybe be the starter for a few weeks? Maybe. But nobody really – and if he's resigned that, okay, I'm going to be a backup, well, I might as well go back to the Browns. I had such a great experience there. But I wasn't expecting to hear that. Were you guys surprised when you heard it or no? And are you buying that there's something here?
No, I ain't surprised. Look, man, you got to look at it from a strategic standpoint. This is a Game of Thrones move. He's like, listen, man, sometimes you could be the hand of the king and that be bad. Sometimes you could be the hand of the king and that turn out very well because you calling the shots because you perceive that you got a king that needs your help that's like 12 years old. And you're like, I'm really the king by default. I'm really that guy over Tommen. I'm really that guy over Joffrey until he got old and deranged.
Joffrey was such a
so crazy.
Worst character ever.
Yeah, worst character. See, this is why you watch this show because you get those little references.
Now, Reek was, what's his name was even worse.
Listen,
not Reek. That guy.
That should be over.
That's a whole nother guy.
Chills from that.
Now, this guy, Flacco, think about it. He came in. He's beloved in the city now. He's the comeback player of the year. He's comfortable with the people in the locker room. They're going to give him a bag. Right? They're going to give him a bag. He's played games. And let's just be clear about it. He's backing up a guy who potentially is coming off an injury. Well, he is coming off an injury.
Yeah.
He's throwing the ball, but who knows what happens with that. Has not particularly played well in the last 2 to 3 years. And you feel like The Browns are already going to upgrade the offense. They're already upgrading the receivers. They're going to get a bunch of stuff ready for the – then you got Chubb coming back. He's like, listen, if something happened or he don't play well, I'm in a very good position right now because I got Chubb. I got some new receivers. I know the offensive line. I feel like my arm is just as good as anybody in the game, and they're going to give me a bag. Let me call Cleveland up and tell them, let me show up. Joe Flacco, I'm back in the building. He's not scared.
I agree with G in a lot of ways. I think from Flacco's perspective, I can see why if he doesn't have a guaranteed starting spot, Cleveland would be the perfect opportunity to come in. Even though he said when he was on this show, he said on your podcast, well, I want a chance to start. He's the bona fide QB2 here to begin. I mean, Deshaun has to prove to us he can stay healthy for 17 games before I think any of us can fully believe he'll be capable of doing that, right? Like, I don't think that's a far-fetched assumption. And if you're Joe Flacco and you want to play, well, if you're not going to get an opportunity to start off the bat, you kind of would bank on going to a team where a quarterback has some health issues, and especially
plus you know the coach, you know the receivers,
and you know the infrastructure. Clearly, he was beloved by the fans here. They welcomed him with open arms.
Right.
If Mayor Bibb was like, let's build the Joe Flacco statue downtown right now, would a single person oppose? Like, no. So to me, it makes sense from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it makes as much sense from the Browns standpoint, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, I've thought a lot about this.
Because Jason, I want to hear what you say, because Jason, he says this is a dangerous game.
Jason, it is a dangerous game.
Real quick, Tyvus has said that too, and he's been in NFL.
And Dustin has said similar things. By the way, a lot of people have been asking me about Dustin. He's doing very well. I spoke to him yesterday.
Shout out to Dustin.
Shout out to you, Dustin.
You'll hear from him soon. I'll just say that. I don't want let him talk for himself, but he's doing really, really, really well. So, there can be an issue when – see, there's two things here. There's two potential issues with Joe Flacco. One is how will Deshaun Watson react to them signing a guy who's maybe he sees as a legitimate threat. The other is the other players in the locker room, some of them may be thinking, oh, we played better with Joe last year. I want Joe to play. Now, the first one, I'm going to give Deshaun Watson the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people don't, and I've been very critical of him recently, deservedly so, in my opinion. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think Deshaun Watson, even with some mental hurdles that he's had to overcome the last couple of years and will still continue to have to overcome, I think he believes himself. There's no way in my mind that Deshaun Watson became as good in the NFL as he was before coming to Cleveland if he didn't think he was better than a 39-year-old Joe Flacco.
I agree.
So I have no concern from that angle. The other thing is legitimate, is can it be a distraction internally? Not what the fans think, because the players for the most part don't care about that. But what do the players in the locker room think, and do they think Joe Flacco could start? And that was my biggest holdup on bringing him back. But the more I thought about it, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it this morning, I said to myself, even if I remember Dustin saying to me in Buffalo that, because when he was in Buffalo, they had no quarterback. All their quarterbacks sucked. And their third-string quarterback, that he and a lot of the other players thought that third-string quarterback was the best guy. But ultimately, it didn't change how they played. It didn't affect how hard he or they worked.
Yeah.
Yes, could it? Can you have a thought? Oh, that guy should be playing over that guy. Don't you think in every locker room there's guys saying, forget just quarterback. That linebacker's better than that linebacker. That offensive lineman's better than that offensive lineman. These things, it's just part of the deal. You're grown men. You're professionals. Yes, there will be some guys thinking that Joe Flacco should play, especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't play well. But if Deshaun Watson plays well, none of that matters. And ultimately, Joe Flacco, the only negative maybe from a cap perspective, but as we've seen time and time again, the Browns don't care. The cap took the biggest jump in the history of the league, and the Browns don't care. I have given Jimmy Haslam credit for this. He doesn't care how much the team spends. So to me, I think Joe Flacco makes a lot of sense.
I think D'Anthony Bell brought it up. He said, man, look, I said, what do you say when people say, you got controversies in the locker room and all this good stuff and who should start and who should play and so-and-so got in trouble? He said, man, I'm just trying to not go back to the hood.
That's it. D'Anthony, do you think he gives a crap what
I said, thank you. They don't care nothing. He's one play away.
What do we think? We think if Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio think Joe Flacco's a better starter, what are those two guys not going to play hard for Deshaun Watson? Give me a break.
Yeah, I don't buy that side of it.
Yeah.
I do have one other question, though. And I'm not sure if it's a concern, just a question, but Deshaun has said they're going to throw the ball this season. They hired Ken Dorsey. They're clearly going under a philosophical change to the offense.
I don't believe that.
You don't?
No, because I think the plan all along has been to throw the ball more. They just couldn't do it last year because he didn't play well enough early, and he was hurt.
Well, fine, but I'm saying a philosophical change from what the offense Joe Flacco ran here was last season.
Okay.
To whatever we see in 2024 from Ken Dorsey.
Joe Flacco, this is the crazy thing about it. Flaccovelli is like, this is what I do.
Well, that's
I throw the ball too.
Yeah.
Hey, don't paint me into a play because I can play action. Don't get it twisted.
That's not necessarily what I'm trying to say.
What are you trying to say?
I guess what my point is, under what Flacco and Stefanski had developed last season, right? And we talked about, and I know you've said it, they had some sort of innate connection where
they had a chemistry.
They knew what each other did best.
Right.
We don't know who's going to call plays, and frankly, I don't think that matters for this part of the discussion. In terms of whatever offense they come up with in the week leading into the game, into the weeks and months leading into this season in general, going off what we know from what Watson said on his podcast, from what I think from the Dorsey hire, from all the other guys they've brought into this offensive staff, it's going to be a much more predominant shotgun offense than it was under center. Now, that doesn't mean Joe Flacco can't play in the shotgun. He had done that for part of his time in Denver. That's mostly what he did in New York. A little different than what he did in Baltimore. But I'm not sure if he's exactly the same fit that when Stefanski talked about the quarterback room, we want our guys to have similar skill sets. Now, maybe that's completely out the window because Flacco did what he did last season. But he still doesn't fit the mold of what you'd want
Mike, I hear in
that archetype offense.
I hear you saying, but I don't think it matters because ultimately, if Joe Flacco becomes the quarterback at some point next year for whatever reason, most likely injury.
They can always go back to the other
offense. They go back to what a coaching staff should do. What gives their quarterback and their offense the best opportunity to succeed?
I didn't say
you have to adjust.
I was just a question to ask.
I don't know.
At the whole situation.
I'm not as convinced as everybody else that the offense is going to go through this drastic change because Ken Dorsey is here. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But I don't think it's a big deal.
I love it from this competitive standpoint. I love the fact that next year, I thought it was an error. When you say, okay, we got DTR, and he's a rookie, you know you're not going to be pressed by no rookie. Like you're not going to be. And last year, for the first few years, the goal was not to press Deshaun Watson. It was, hey, let's get him acclimated. But we right here at 3-4 years. I think there's nothing more impressive, and there's nothing more different from having a brand new coach, because that brand new coach don't know you from nobody, right? So he just coached. He learned about everybody from day one. A brand new offense, and you're playing against a guy that is not a rookie or a young dude. You're playing against a veteran. So when they in there going X, Y, Z, blah, 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 Joe Flacco in there like, oh, yeah, we used to run a variation of that in Denver. We used to run a variation of that. So what you're saying is this is X2C Jet 34C. Yeah, same thing. And Deshaun in there, and Deshaun is very smart. He'll pick it up quickly too. But I love the idea of Joe Flacco coming out in 2 days in practice and camps and people saying, dang, look at that ball Joe threw. And Deshaun say, that's a nice ball. He threw a nice ball. Every throw now has something on it. Now Deshaun got to lock in and say, listen, I got a dude underneath me that is a bona fide thrower of the football. So I got to lock in. It ain't going to be no like every game, every practice is competition. And I think Deshaun needs to have that competition to bring back that fire because he's not going to just go out there. DTR and PJ Walker ain't behind him. This is Flacco with a ring.
Well, let me ask you this, G.
It's true.
I'm with you. Iron sharpens iron. All positions across the board. They want to sign, if Andrew Berry wants to allocate money to 33 defensive tackles this summer, so they could whittle them out and get the 4 best. Like, I'm all for that at every position group. In a hypothetical world, if it was Brissett or Joe Flacco as the 2 potential QB2 options, we know Deshaun and Joby were super tight when they were here.
Yep.
Flacco, we think they have a decent relationship. We don't know to the same level as we knew for sure.
Jacoby's no threat.
No threat.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if those are your 2 options, would you rather have Jacoby, the no threat, or Flacco, the theoretical, could be a threat to push Watson? Which scenario do you think would be best to get the best out of Deshaun Watson?
I'm taking the threat. And even though he's not no crazy threat, like he's going to do it in a professional way. He's not going to rock the boat. Flacco understands he's been a backup and a starter in this league. He's been out of the league before, so he knows what the role is. But the thing I like best is the fact that it's going to push him, and it gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win in the event that Deshaun Watson goes down. Because if you ask the team, they like Jacoby Brissett. But listen, that's why I threw that in the chat. We were talking the other day. I said, listen, I feel very comfortable with Flacco winning me some football games. If you got a Chubb, that's 90 to 95%. You go out and get a free agent receiver, get somebody in the draft, and then get you another stud up front. Now we can let the defense shine, but still, he's going to benefit from because Joe Flacco can get the football in different places of the field that Jacoby Brissett can't.
And ultimately, we talked about this when the season ended. This is an incredible gauntlet in the AFC led by a behemoth in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the only way you can ultimately get past Kansas City is that you have Deshaun Watson playing like he did in Houston or somewhere close to it. But there's steps along the way. And if Deshaun Watson is going to miss a few games, there is no better option for the Browns to win those games than Joe Flacco. There is not a better option.
I agree.
At least, certainly not a better proven option. Doesn't mean there couldn't potentially be a surprise guy. But there's no better proven option. And ultimately, let's say Deshaun Watson has a tremendous season, plays 14 games, but he misses 3 weeks. The Browns' record in those 3 weeks that Joe Flacco or anybody else could play could be the difference between the 1 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed.
Home playoffs.
How big a deal would that be?
I mean, we're talking playoffs versus no playoffs potentially.
That's right. Yeah. And if you're going to have any chance against the Chiefs, you would think. I know the Bengals did beat them in Kansas City one year, but if you're going to have any chance for the most part, you want to be at home.
And this year's schedule for the Browns is daunting. Like, they play a lot of really good quarterbacks. You know, not take anything away from last season.
Yeah.
They played a pretty cupcake schedule in terms of their opponent quarterbacks, especially who was healthy when they played them.
Yeah.
You look at the raw schedule for next year, it's a who's who of who are the top quarterbacks in football. So if a guy like Joe Flacco could keep the boat afloat for 2 or 3 weeks and give you at least a puncher's chance to beat a Baltimore, a Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure they play Kansas City, a Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I think, is Miami back in the schedule?
I believe so.
Like, the Chargers are back in the schedule. Like, any of those teams.
The schedule's brutal.
You have to be able to score points.
Yeah.
And Flacco, we saw last season, he wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Certainly had the turnover issues, but he at least gave you an opportunity.
Who would have thought, McNuggets, that Joe Flacco would be under Project Stockpile? Who would have thought?
He may, and that's just part of free agency and Project Stockpile.
A lot of other parts.
We're going to get to running backs. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on wide receivers, and we will tomorrow, Friday, all next week. But quickly on the wide receivers, now that the franchise tag period is over. When we first started talking about free agent wide receivers, even before the season was over, the top 3 guys we mentioned are all gone. Higgins, franchise tag. Michael Pittman, franchise tag. And Mike Evans, when it looked like he was going to become a free agent, signed a 2-year extension.
They weren't even close to getting there.
No. 3 best guys off the board. How panicked are you or concerned that those 3 guys are off the board, guys?
I'm not panicked. I kind of expected it, to be honest. I thought
Evans was going to get the free agency.
Could, but I also
Although I didn't really think the Browns were going to sign him anyway.
That was my thing. If it came down to money and Evans had his choice, I just think he would have ended up signing elsewhere. So I was always looking more in the Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis, Calvin Ridley bin for realistic opportunities. Even a Curtis Samuel's a guy I'm starting to believe a little more could be the wide receiver target for Andrew Berry. But I just think it puts a bigger emphasis on AB going after someone on the defensive line to boost that side of the ball, as opposed to making a home run swing in the wide receiver.
I think more and more now than ever, I'm starting to look at that number 2 pick pick number 54 as a potential package for a veteran wide receiver today.
The problem is, I mean, you can't get a top 15 wide receiver without giving up a first-round pick, and they don't have one.
Yeah, they don't have one. That's why that pick would have to come with somebody else or a potential another pick to get another guy. Now, look, it's a little alarming. It basically just takes off. It's like playing the Powerball, right? You're excited the night before, then the Powerball number come out, and you don't got the winning numbers. You're like, I wasn't going to win anyway. T. Higgins was all, the Bengals was not going to let that go down. Pittman and then Mike Evans looked like he got there, but I always said that's far-fetched. To me, the realistic guys was the Hollywood Browns. The realistic guy is Gabe Davis. And I don't know. I don't even think if Stephon Diggs is really a guy that's realistic. I mean, if you're talking about him getting into the mix of things. So now you say, would you take a Brian Burns? Would you take a Wilkins?
Well, Burns got franchise tag, too.
So he's out the mix. Yeah. Defensive tackle Wilkins, like Christian Wilkins.
Now, he's in the conversation.
He's in the conversation. Jonathan Allen.
I mentioned this yesterday, real quick, yes or no, but hypothetical trade.
Yeah.
Allen for Wyatt Teller, would you do it? We spent a bunch of time on this yesterday. So.
Yeah.
They both have 2 years left on their deal.
Yes.
Allen has a slightly bigger cap hit, so you take on about $5 million.
Probably,
Yes.
White Teller's their best offensive lineman.
Jason said no at first. By the end of the discussion, he said yes.
Because
it's tough.
Because here's what I would do. Yeah. I would just move I'm either moving Conklin, DeJuan Jones, or
a lot of injuries there.
Or Wills to guard.
Yeah. One last thing on the wide receivers that I want to say here. I don't think a trade. I don't. Listen, there could always be something that comes out of nowhere that you don't expect. I don't see a trade scenario that's realistic for the Browns. I'm worried about Stephon Diggs. And he's making a crazy amount of money for a guy who I think's on the decline.
I sent the numbers the other day. He makes his cap hits are absurd.
I'm not interested.
And he's not.
A.J. Brown is not getting traded. I don't believe if A.J. Brown were getting traded, the Browns can't get him because you have to give him a first-round pick.
At minimum.
Well, it'll be more than that. But there's going to be a team that would give him a first-round pick. The Browns can't top that. So even if by somehow he was traded, he's not getting traded to the Browns.
I would love to get Jameson Williams.
Why would the Lions have zero incentive to trade him?
The only reason that rumor's out there, and we love Earl, but Earl put it out there.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
Hey,
I love
like
Earl.
I love that.
I love where his mind's at, but that's just not realistic.
Hey, it's thinking outside the box. There's zero reason for the Lions to trade Jameson Williams, so that's not going to happen. To me, if I'm the Browns, I am targeting Marquise Brown and Calvin Ridley, and I'm getting one of those guys.
I thought she was going to say you were going to get both of them. I was like, dang, bull, you came back from vacation.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
I'm getting one of those guys.
Both. They just have no one else then.
But they wouldn't have to do that. But listen, you don't need both. You don't need. I take both, but you don't need both.
Nice.
Here's the thing about Marquise Brown and Calvin Ridley. They're the only two guys that the Browns can realistically get, not including the draft, that are clearly number 2 receivers, which they don't have, and both have still some, at least mid-tier to back-tier wide receiver 1 potential.
Yeah.
Ridley looked like he was becoming a wide receiver 1. He's out of the league a couple of years last year, inconsistent. He's a little older than you think because he's missed some time. But those guys can both play, and those guys are huge, in my opinion, pretty significant upgrades for the Browns.
Very big.
And all of a sudden now, I got Elijah Moore as my 3rd receiver.
You feel great
third
about that.
Receiver, he's
feel
fine.
great about it. Yeah.
He's not a 2. Those guys are, and they're the only ones. Again, there might be somebody that comes out of nowhere.
So you're not taking Gabe Davis?
I'm not interested in Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis showed no consistency at all playing with maybe the second-best quarterback in the league.
And they throw the ball
all the time. All the time.
I'm with you. I think
Calvin Ridley was inconsistent, but he had missed time, and he was playing with an inconsistent quarterback.
The number one
Marquise Brown was playing with nobody.
And if you look at Spotrac, which is, by the way, Spotrac is not perfect, but they are the only site that puts out the projected contracts based on the average value for their production.
Right.
The money for Gabe Davis, Marquise Brown, and Calvin Ridley, all right in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I'm not interested.
And if you're
in
ranking
Gabe
those
Davis.
3, I think just like you, Ridley, Brown are together, 1, 2. You want to argue either way, I'm fine.
Right.
And then there's a drop-off, and then it's Gabe Davis. But for the same money, I'd much, much, much rather have Brown or Ridley over Gabe Davis.
I think the Browns should really make it a priority to get one of those 2 guys. I hope they do. All right, Anthony, what do you got for us before we get to running backs in free agency?
Yeah, before we go to running backs, guys, I want to remind you that we talked a lot about the Cavs, but that game was insane. So if you didn't get enough coverage, Ultimate Cavs is tonight with Jason and Mike. Mike, what time is that?
It's at 6 o'clock. I have a great tease for you. At the pregame press conference yesterday, J.B. Bickerstaff called Jason Lloyd an asshole. I have it on video, and I'll tell you what led to that and the reactions from it afterwards. It was a phenomenal moment in the press room. JB's the best, by the way. It was very – you know what? Just tune in at 6 o'clock and find out how it all
Yeah, I can't add anything more to that. There's your break.
That's good.
It was hysterical, by the way.
I look forward to hearing about it. Let's talk about the running back position. I think what hangs over this whole conversation is what is Nick Chubb come September?
Yeah.
Is he not able to play? Is he able to play with limitations?
Is he out half the season?
Is he able to play with no limitations, but he's not quite as good? Or is he the same guy? That's 4 different possibilities. It's a big spectrum.
And the
Browns have to make a decision on potentially adding a veteran running back without having the answer to any of those possibilities. So, but here's the thing. Running backs don't get paid, especially older guys. The running back market is going to be flooded. But you got a list there, Anthony, of who's available?
Yes, if we can take tag board here.
So look at this list.
Oh, Lord.
Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Austin Ekeler, Joe Mixon. I thought he'd be cut last year. He wasn't. The Bengals, I'll give them credit for this. When they sign a guy to a contract, they often don't cut him, even if you should, because they honor the contract. That's the one thing they're really good about with money. But I think it'll change this year. I do think Joe Mixon will be cut. So that's 7 guys that have been starting running backs.
I need one of them.
And Zach Moss, who's not on that list. And he's
Zach.
in a different category than those guys historically.
The money on these guys
have one of them.
is not going to be high.
No.
That being, and part of me is like, the cap's fictional. It doesn't matter. Jimmy doesn't care. But if they're not going to spend a ton of money at running back, I just can't see that happening.
Okay, before we talk about this,
I think most of those guys, outside of maybe Barkley, are bargain basement prices.
$5-6 million, right?
At the most.
Can I ask one question before we dive into this? Because it's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Let's say they restructure Chubb's deal, which I think we all agree they're going to do.
Yeah.
Is it possible to sign a guy for more guaranteed money than Nick Chubb would get this year?
Yeah.
How'd that sit with Nick?
I don't think they would do that.
Because Chubb don't. Listen, here's the thing.
They could, I agree, but I doubt they will.
Here's the thing, Chubb, I don't get about Chubb. He don't care nothing about that, bro. Nick Chubb cares about championships. That's the only thing he's talking about right now. And he done seen his mortality. When you have multiple knee injuries, right, he's probably telling them, chomping that his best years was with Kareem Hunt. His best years was take these carries so I could get me about 260 carries and do my Nick Chubb thing and get these boys up out of here. He's telling them, look, get me one of them dudes. Right now, you could, because here's the thing, it's Operation Stockpile does not take in consideration any money. We don't care about that money.
Okay. That's an important caveat.
Yeah.
Okay? I am more in that camp. Not as far as G, but I'm more on his side of that camp.
I have 2 options for this, by the way.
To me, there's an easy answer as to who the Browns should sign from that list. Go ahead. Who do you guys got?
Saquon. All things being
equal,
you're
wrong.
Saquon.
That's interesting, but you're wrong.
Listen,
I was calling for Saquon at the trade deadline last year.
I like
give me one guy. Give me one guy. Put the list up again.
I know both going to say Josh Jacobs.
Incorrect. Pick your one guy, because it's an easy answer.
Because I think I have a guy I want them to sign.
Yeah.
But it's not Barkley.
Who's your guy?
So, okay.
Is this who you want them to sign, or who you think?
I'm telling you guys the perfect fit for this team.
The guy that they should sign is Austin Ekeler.
No.
The guy that I would love and jump up and down is Saquon Barkley. And then there's the medium guy in Josh Jacobs.
Before you go.
Hold on, Earl, I want Earl's comment.
Well,
Earl, who's your guy?
Earl is currently on the phone. He had to step
All right,
away
so
for a minute.
I said Saquon is the ideal fit.
Yeah.
I want DeAndre Swift.
Okay. Very interesting, but you are wrong, and you are wrong. The perfect fit for the Cleveland Browns is one Mr. Tony Pollard.
Really?
No.
First of all, Tony Pollard, I believe, is the youngest of the bunch.
Is he the youngest?
No, Swift is.
Swift? Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Swift been in the league for a
second youngest of
No,
the
he's only
bunch.
been in the league for 4 years. It's shocking how.
Right.
Yeah,
Tony
shocking.
Pollard had his worst season the last few years last year. Why? You know why?
Well, he's coming off a broken ankle.
Well, that was
part
part of
it. And he was the lead back, didn't have Zeke.
Tony Pollard is a 1B. Those guys, put up that list again, please, Anthony. Those other guys are all 1As.
Yeah.
All right?
No.
Ekeler, I think, is going over the cliff. I'm not interested.
Swift, I don't know if Swift's a 1A.
I think Swift's a 1A. I believe he's a 1A. Now, I'm okay. Swift will be my second choice. Josh Jacobs, I'm not interested. He wants to, because Barkley and Jacobs are every down backs. I don't need that. I got Nick Chubb. I don't need an every down back. I don't like the fit of them together. Okay. Derrick Henry, I love, and I still think he's got one good year left. But he's the same player as Nick Chubb. I mean, same type of player as Nick Chubb. They need to get a back that's good at catching passes. That's not his thing either.
That's why I said Ekeler.
All right? Now, to me, Ekeler is going over the cliff. He was great at that.
I just think he's too old.
I'm worried he's going over the cliff.
How old is he?
So he's like 30 or whatever.
He's 29, but he's a million
He looked
touches.
awful last year.
He was really slow.
Okay.
Now, that brought me down to Pollard and Swift. Now, I think when I look at Tony Pollard, he is an elite pass-catching back. He was when Zeke was there. And he was so good as a guy who would get 8, 10 touches, 12 touches a game. Once you got too high on him, he's not good. Now, Swift can do that too, but and he can catch passes also. But he's been injury-prone in his career, and he's been up and down. Pollard was not as good last year, but for the most part, he's been consistent in his career, and outside of the one injury that ended the season before, he's mostly been healthy. He's young. I think he's only 26. Which is young for a running back.
Second youngest on that board.
Second youngest on the board, and he's great at catching passes, and he knows and they know that he is a 1B, perfect combination with Nick Chubb. Perfect. That's the guy to get.
Let me tell you why.
And I don't think he's going to get a ton of money.
Let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
And I agree in the premise of what you're saying. But Tony Pollard, in his last year in Dallas, before Zeke left, thought he was the best back on that team. He's coming off a legitimate, it's not catastrophic in the sense of Nick Chubb. He broke his ankle. So a very difficult injury to come back from. When you watch anything from 2023 from Tony Pollard, the explosiveness you saw in 2021 and 2022 was not there. His yards per catch.
Right, but it's a year later.
Fair.
It usually takes a year,
I'm
and now
saying,
by the time next season starts, he's nearly 2 full years off the injury.
Sure.
He's young enough.
Sure. Maybe.
Go ahead.
It's a running back. It's a very difficult physical position.
Yeah.
The reason I like Swift for all the same reasons you mentioned about Pollard, I just think Swift is younger and has less wear and tear and is healthier. The fewest amount of receptions DeAndre Swift's ever had in his career, 40. He had 39 last year, but 40.
Yeah.
46, 48, 62, and then 40 last year in Philadelphia. Over 1,000 rushing yards behind a very talented Philadelphia offensive line. You look at his touchdown, only had 5. Well, they did the tush-push on every first and goal, second and goal. The numbers could have been
significantly higher. But he also had the advantage of playing next to a quarterback that ran the ball a lot.
Which goes back to your 1B option.
Yeah.
He's already been in situations where he's not the primary runner. He's
so is Pollard.
We're just picking our different flavors.
Yeah,
I think we're saying the same thing. I just like the younger, more explosive Swift. You like the more experienced.
I think Pollard will have the.
But we're kind of saying for the same arguments.
Yes.
What happens if we're assuming here? What happens if Nick Chubb is just a 1B? There's a possibility Nick Chubb come back and it's like he's a 1B.
But in my mind, and you may be right, if the Browns keep Nick Chubb, it's because they think he's going to be that guy again.
Oh, I think they would have to keep him regardless.
I don't think so.
I think.
Yeah, they can't cut Chubb.
They can't.
I don't agree.
Unless you refuse to take a pay cut, they can't cut Chubb.
Why? People going to stop watching the Browns? As much as we all love Chubb, is anybody going to stop watching if they cut Nick Chubb? They'd get bad PR and everybody be angry by the time the season started.
But if they're bad and Deshaun Watson don't play well, somebody going to get fired.
They're going to get crushed anyway.
They're going to get fired.
But I just think, I don't think, to get like a Saquon Barkley, you're going to have to, like he's the one guy that might get a bigger contract. I don't know.
I mean, Saquon.
He's the best of the group.
Saquon,
he's always hurt.
As a 1A, if you can't, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's me. If you say Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb, I'm like.
But here's the
thing. Then you can't throw the ball 70%.
Here's the problem.
Sure I can.
Here's the problem.
Deshaun wants to throw. As this works, I want to throw that
Mike,
thing.
we always remember Saquon Barkley as a rookie, which was special.
Oh, and then he got hurt, but he actually hasn't been as hurt as you think
he played.
I know
he played well last year.
He has a Mike Williams.
That good last year.
I'm with you.
They had all
their offense was.
Their offense was horrible.
Fair.
Saquon has a Mike Williams-esque injury history, where you think he's hurt way more than he is because he's always banged up.
But he's played with a lot of injuries, and it's hurt his effectiveness.
But he was great 2 years ago.
I think somebody will pay him a lot of money. I don't think the Browns should be that team.
I agree.
The Browns, as a running team, when they are healthy, up front, they are one of the best running teams in the game, period. And I think you put him behind a Deshaun Watson that can do a bunch of things with an increased wide receiver position where you got guys that are deep vertical threats and Njoku. I just think he's set up for having one of the. For me, I want people that is going to buy in when I tell them this is Operation Stockpile and say, listen, you might not get all you're going to get, but when you get the ball, you're going to be wide open.
Well, that's not going to be safe.
I think if all of a sudden you sign Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, I mean, you are loaded with weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Swift. I mean, for the same reason.
Or Swift,
Pollard.
fine.
I'm just happy.
Choice.
I am happy. I'm just happy you two people have now come around to say, yeah, we need to be looking at this running back position.
Yeah, I was.
Because for a lot of times, people, if you mention it, no.
I was, for the most part, been against going after a veteran running back, but I've changed my mind on that.
I think when you see, because I was always just draft a guy, but when you see the market, and to Bull's earlier point, there's so many guys out there. These guys are going to be cheap. And another guy we didn't even mention, who I wouldn't be totally opposed to, would be Deonta Foreman out of Chicago, who's also a free agent. I think you could sign for like
you get it for nothing.
$1.5 million.
Zach Moss.
I like
these guys. But I think you can get. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think Pollard or Swift are getting 5, 6, 7 million max.
Yeah,
I think.
And plus, I'm not going to have to lock into them for more than 1 year. So if it doesn't work out, I move on.
And look, man,
market dictates everything.
Take a look at the passing yards in the playoffs, right? Take a look at what the dramatic drop in passing yards are when you go from week 17 to that first week. People ain't throwing for 300 yards, man. Like, guys, you know, the Baltimore Ravens couldn't even throw for 200, 300. Patrick Mahomes wasn't throwing for 300. But what they can do is, if you want to beat Kansas City, you got to pound out them third downs. I need them to be on the field a while and moving the ball down the field. And 2 good running backs is better than just one medium one.
Now, Kansas City did it mostly with one running back, to be fair.
Yeah.
And he was a 7th-round pick. But they got it right.
But they found a diamond in the rough with Pacheco.
Yeah.
And by the way, they had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round they drafted. Yeah. They was like, well, listen, we got Pacheco. He's better. Get up out of here.
Yeah, that's it.
Edwards-Helaire is also a free agent who, if Cleveland wants to go in a straight path. I don't like him. I'm just saying he could fit if Chubb's your workhorse, if you think he's back to that, this the pass-catching back, scat back, third down guy.
I like the idea of Pollard or Swift with Chubb. You keep Ford as your third back.
Yep.
And that's it. Then keep it moving, as G. Bush would say.
Keep it pushing. Yep.
All right. Another football topic. You got to read before we get to it? Go ahead.
I do have one read real quick. I just want to remind everybody that you guys can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Plus, don't forget to check out the Profit Boost bonus tokens in the app that you can use on the UNC Duke game. You can go into your account page and learn all about your boost right now. You just have to go visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
So, I don't remember when this came out, if it was Monday or maybe it was last week.
The kickoff rules?
Yeah.
It was proposed on Sunday.
So there was, every year around this time, there are rules proposals that are put out by teams or whatever. The Browns actually. Andrew Berry talked about. You talked about that. Pushing the trade deadline back. I'm 100% with Andrew Berry. Of course, it should be pushed back. But one of the other rules that you guys didn't get a chance to discuss, and we'll get to it now, is a potential significant change to the way kickoffs are done. Mike, you got the details for us.
Yeah, both onside kicks and kickoffs. We'll talk about the onside kicks first, then we'll do the kickoffs. Yeah. But according to the new proposal, which is just a proposal, this has not been voted in, but just
24 out of 32 owners have to vote.
75% has to vote
for
to
it
pass.
To change.
The new onside kick rules would eliminate surprise onside kicks. So you'd have to call it in advance, and as you can see on the screen, you can only do it while trailing in the fourth quarter. The caveat, which makes this at least a little bit entertaining, is the NFL had banned overloading one side of the field for onside kicks, which had eliminated essentially any chance of a return. I don't have the exact numbers, but the return rate, or recovery rate, or success rate on onside kicks in 2023 was less than 1%. It was like 2 for 100 and 126 or some absurd number like that. Now you can overload one side of the field, which they're hoping, even if it's declared ahead of time, will bring it back up to about the 5% recovery rate it had been in prior years before they banned the overload. So we'll start with the onside kick. You take out surprise onside kicks. You have to declare it and can only do it in the fourth quarter when trailing, but you can overload one side of the field. Essentially goes back to
why are we
the
taking
previous
out,
rules.
Why are we taking out surprise onside kicks?
I think, and once again, I think it's to give the team the ability to overload the field so you take out the injury risk of guys flying.
Well, no, I don't think you could. I think you got to put it all together, Mike, because the reason they'd have to do this with the onside kick is because of where they're putting the players, I think, for the new kick rules. Isn't that a big part of this?
I thought if you declared the onside kick, it'd be from where you used to onside kick. I don't know.
Right, but if you're not doing an onside kick, then the kicker and the rest of the team are in a
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's why. We can't do them separately.
Okay, so then the kickoff rule, and bad job out of me, Bull, you're right, that does make a difference in why you'd have to declare. The new kickoff rule is what the XFL adopted last season, and Bull, you're right, they actually are getting rid of it this season in the UFL. They're going back to traditional kickoff.
Right, they're combining the XFL and USFL.
But the XFL's kickoff rules last season were a lot of fun. Essentially, the kicker for the team kicks off at his own 40-yard line. The other 10 players in the defense start at the opponent's 40-yard line. They cannot move till the receiver catches the ball. Now, there's a few caveats.
No, here we go. The kick and return teams would line up on the receiving team's 40.
Yeah, but the kicker's still back on his own side.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so it's a 5-yard. Yes. There's a 5-yard collision zone. Essentially, what they're trying to do is eliminate the high-speed collisions on kickoff, which led to so many concussions and injuries. Now, if the ball goes out of the end zone for a touchback, the offense then starts at the own 35-yard line. So it's an additional 10 yards on a kickback, on a touchback. If the ball is kicked and rolls into the end zone, it's a traditional touchback at the 25. What you're aiming to do as a kicker is get the ball to land or get the returner to catch the ball inside the 20-yard line and the end zone, which forces a return. And then you have your guys, 10 players versus 10 blockers and the returner, and there's only a 5-yard run-up for collisions. It was very successful in the XFL last season. It brought back the kickoff, which in the NFL is a non-existent play.
They changed the rule in the NFL. I don't remember exactly when they did this, but if on a kickoff, if the ball, like right now, if you could just declare, like you can essentially declare a fair catch on a kickoff.
You can fair catch and get the 25-yard line.
Right. That would be gone.
Yes.
So if the ball lands at the 1-yard line, you got to pick it up and run with it, or you've got the ball at the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
That will lead to a lot more kickoffs. And the reason they've been making the kickoffs less thing is because they didn't want these big collisions. But what Mike's point is, the team that's kicking off outside of the kicker, the rest of the team will be at the receiving team's 40, and the rest of the receiving team, besides 1 or 2 kick returners, will be at the 35. So they'll be 5 yards away from each other. So there'll be no massive collisions because they won't be running all these yards and that's why
the safety
part of this they have to change the onside kick, and you can't have a surprise onside kick. Just like you can't do a surprise 2-point conversion anymore.
Yeah.
Because you could, but you
can fake a field goal.
Right. But yeah,
they should just.
It's very complicated, and the league doesn't often make drastic changes like this. It would certainly make kickoffs.
Way more fun.
Here's the thing: when they first changed the extra point rule, I was like, "What's the point? Why are they doing this? Who cares?" But it made the extra point a more interesting play.
And you can
this would make the kickoff a more interesting play, not only because there'll be more returns, but also now
there's strategy involved.
Absolutely.
A lot of strategy.
Right now, on most kickoffs, the kicker just kicks it out of the end zone or into the end zone.
There were 0 kick returns in the Super Bowl. 0.
Right. But now, the kicker is never going to be trying to kick it in the end zone. You go from a situation where kickers have always been trying to kick it in the end zone. Now, they're trying to get it as close to the goal line without going over. That's an interesting skill set.
I would not even have him be a kicker. I would put him back, and I'd have a punter punt. Like, take the kicker out, make him a punter. So now, if you want to put them 5 yards apart, he punts the ball really high in the air, and you can't move until the ball hits the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
And the offensive players that are on the line, those guys can't move either.
No one moves till the returner.
So only the 2 return guys and the kicker can move before the ball is caught.
Correct.
Or what if it hits the ground?
That's what I'm saying.
If it hits the ground and then rolls into the end zone, it's a normal touchback.
No. Let's say it hits the ground. and the return guy tries to pick it up. Can the guys not run until he picks it up, or can they run as soon as it hits the ground?
To my understanding, and don't quote me on this, to my understanding, if it hits the ground, it's a game on. Game on.
So it's once the ball is touched, essentially by a player of the field.
So think about the odds of this. Okay, if you're a punter, you punt the ball, you sky punt it, right?
Yeah.
It lands right in between somebody. It hits the ground. Can you imagine the melee? You don't know if it's going to bounce backwards, leftwards.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be crazy. Like, that would be the best way to get an onside kick because you don't know where it's going to go.
That's true.
It's off a tee, which is the one. And I'm not sure if they would allow it to be a drop punt. But right now, today, in the NFL, the kick return's a non-existent play.
Basically.
I don't know the exact percentages, but I'm going to guess.
And there's really no strategy.
93% of the time, the ball's kicked out of the end zone for a touchback.
Yeah.
You get maybe one kick return a game if you're lucky, which has taken out some of the most exciting plays in football. Go back to Josh Cribbs, one of the most popular guys to ever play for the Browns, especially in the modern era. His best trait was kick returns. And you go back and look at the XFL stats, and I have a friend who works for the XFL who said they're livid that it's being taken out of the game because it was so fun and such a big part of their success last year.
Yeah.
That this, even if it creates 4 or 5 kick returns a game, that's 4 or 5 exciting plays of football that we're not getting.
And it's not just the kick returns. It's that if you kick it into the end zone, the offense starts to 35. That's a massive
severe
change.
consequences. And it adds strategy.
Now you're like 2 plays away from a field goal in a big spot. I mean,
it just adds a level of excitement that there currently isn't to the game, and I'm all for it.
I like it, even if it means there's no surprise onside kicks because there weren't that many of those anyway.
The only one I could remember specifically was the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like, was it Indy New Orleans?
Yeah.
Sean Payton came out and did
That's
the surprise. True. Which would be a bummer to take out, but that's one when there's a Super Bowl, 2009?
And plus, when you do have an onside kick,
you can overload the field now.
You can overload the field, so you're more likely to recover it. Yeah. Still not likely to recover it, but more likely than you are currently. Yeah. So I'll give it a thumbs up.
I'm all for it. Any way to make a play that's currently a 0, a something again.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I don't know what the downside. Right now, it can't get worse. Like, with all due respect to the NFL, it's a great product, but
they take punts out too. Like, punts is like you can't hit the long snapper makes every tackle. You can't hit him. Like, he's uncovered. Like, so he makes a tackle. It's like punts and they used to be a major part of special teams. When people say special teams wins game, now you're not doing that.
My nephew, I was in Florida, obviously.
You were?
And in case you hadn't heard. And my sister and my brother-in-law and my nephew came down for the second weekend we were there. They were going to 2 spring training games, and we met up with them for dinner. And my nephew, who's a baseball player, that's his passion, that's what he's really good at, told me he hasn't played football. He did as a little kid, but he's been practicing being a kicker. He's like, I want to get hurt playing football because I love baseball. But he's like, maybe I can get a scholarship being a kicker. So he's been training as a kicker. And I said, well, that's a good idea, but also think about long snapper. And I said, because I was telling him that this guy I worked with in New York, his son just got a college scholarship being a long snapper.
It's the best thing in the world.
Long snapper, kicker, you don't get hit much.
If you out there and you got a son and you know, he likes sports, but he may not have the size, athleticism to play with him. Send him to a college camp, right, in summers. Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, wherever it's going to be. They give out, and if he's there and is able to long snap, he's going to get on the board, and he's going to be on one of a short list of guys who are going to be eligible to get a scholarship for long snapper. By the way, they don't get tackled. If you touch him in practice, you're in trouble. Like, they don't hit anybody. They don't do any of that. Full scholarship is one of the best things in the world.
And if you're good, you could play 20 years. You're never going to get a ton of money, relatively, but you could make $1 million a year for 15 years.
Yes, you can.
Real quick long snapper story. When I was in Texas, there was a little tiny private high school there. A kid named Levi Hancock. It was a TAPS, which is like the Christian schools, or the private schools, whatever. He won all-state quarterback in that division like 3 years in a row. Was like 6'2", 220 pounds, a man amongst boys in that level of football. Got a full ride to A&M as a long snapper. And I went out and did a story on him and his long snapper training. Like, how'd you pick up on it? It's like, I was just messing around in practice one day, and I long snapped it on the money from like 20 yards out.
Yeah. Ended
up being the #1 rated long snapper in the country in his class. And it's like, is it hard? He's like, well, I can throw the football 60 yards, so this is, for me. And I was like,
yeah.
you never think of it, but he wasn't a D1 quarterback.
Right.
He's now a 3-year letterman at A&M
as
a long snapper. Like, I wonder how he's doing, but good for you,
If you could
Levi.
do it, you could do it in 1.1, 1.1 point.
Yeah.
They time you, and you could be on the money at all times, even when it's wet. That's
They're
like
hysterical workouts too. Like they snap towels.
Yeah.
Like they fake snap towels and they push the weight back and they take 3 scoots backwards and they push the weight back. It's a funny workout to watch.
They just go by themselves. Like they're just like the punter, the kicker, the long snapper. They're in really good shape because they just run. It's like they run around. This is crazy.
All right, Anthony, what do you got for us? We're going to switch it up.
All right, guys, before we switch it up to baseball, I actually want to remind you all again that you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And you can also check out the FanDuel Profit Boost tokens. It's in the app. You can go to your account page, check out the boost, and you want to use them for the UNC Duke game this weekend. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
So spring training well underway right now. We are 3 weeks tomorrow. 3 weeks from tomorrow is the start of the 3 weeks from tomorrow is the start of the Major League season for most teams. Although
the Dodgers and
Padres are playing 2 games in South Korea. I don't know when they're playing. I can't remember.
It's like 12 days before the rest of the season.
Something like that. So in like a week and a half. And those games count. There's 2 games. They count towards the regular season.
Do you like that,
standings.
by the way, before we go on?
I think it's cool. Yeah, I don't have a problem
far
with
in advance of the actual.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but I don't care. We're for our fantasy baseball league, we're actually drafting after that. So we're drafting the day before the season starts. And if you draft anybody on the Padres and Dodgers, you're getting credit for their stats for those 2 days, whether they're good or bad. So if you have a pitcher and he gives up 15 runs, you're stuck with that.
So does that mean technically, would you agree with this then? Because baseball is a more popular sport than football in the world, that baseball is the second most popular sport after soccer?
Basketball.
I think
because you got Japan.
It depends where you are in the country.
South Korea.
In Asia, in a lot of parts of Asia, baseball is more popular. In South Korea, Taiwan, China's coming up. Japan certainly it's huge. Yeah. And then in Central and South America, it's big. Especially northern South America. But in Europe, nobody cares about baseball. It's coming up in a few countries, but for the most part, no.
Basketball is mainly.
I still think basketball's
main in Europe.
I would say, I'm not even sure that even just it being an American sport, that football isn't more popular total than basketball and baseball. I don't know.
It's. I just thought
soccer is definitely number one, even though none of us really care. But
soccer is huge. Because I thought about it, in Japan and South Korea. I mean,
baseball's huge there. Yeah,
I've been watching a lot of things on YouTube where these guys go to these pitching factories.
Yeah,
and they're just that's all they do.
I'm watching the show on HBO Max called Tokyo Vice. It's a really good show, based very loosely on a true story, and they're often a lot of the scenes take place at the batting cage. Anyway, so the reason we brought up baseball and spring training is because I was fortunate to speak to Terry Francona yesterday. The former Guardians manager sat down with me for about 20 minutes. We're going to play a clip from the interview, and we'll talk more about it. If you'd like to see the whole interview, I'd love it if you checked out my podcast, The Bullpen with Adam the Bull, part of the Bet Rivers Network. You can check it out on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Just look it up. It came out yesterday, and Terry was great, was very generous with his time. I tried to get him to, I asked him about the Guardians specifically when it came to payroll and his frustration, and he kind of avoided the topic. So I let it go because what am I going to do?
Don't want to press him.
I'm not going to press him on that because he's still working for the team in a limited capacity. But we did get into. Did we have the question on the clip? I can't remember.
The question's not on there. So if you want to set up the question,
then let me set it up. So I asked Terry Francona more generally about payrolls in baseball and whether or not he thought it was good or bad for baseball that there's a large disparity between the top payrolls and the bottom. Here's what he said.
The way you said it, I actually really agree with about sometimes when you have a payroll, like you said, the Yankees or the Mets, And if you make a mistake, you can help it go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cleveland, we couldn't do that. If we made a mistake, it could haunt us for a year or two. I need to be careful because, when I was in Boston, I didn't complain about the disparity. Yeah. So on the other side of it, I didn't think people probably wanted to start hearing me complaining. I don't think it's great for the game, but I also don't have a solution. So until you have a solution, I don't know if you can just sit here and complain. In football, they divvy up the money exactly even because every game is broadcast nationally. Baseball is so regional, and what the Guardians get compared to maybe the Yankees, it's not even close. And I know there's some revenue sharing, but it's not enough to make it where everybody's even. So I don't have the answer. But to your question, I don't think it's healthy for the game. I don't think it's good that when 7 or 8 teams go to spring training, and if they play really well, they might end up 500. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's good for the fan base. I don't think it's good for the game. But I also don't have a way to remedy that.
All right, that was Terry Francona on my podcast. Make sure you check out the whole thing. Again, please hit the subscribe button. We talked a lot of different stuff. I knew he wouldn't. I asked him about the Hall of Fame. He's such a modest guy. He didn't want to get into it, but and a lot of other things. I asked him about Jose Ramirez and Austin Hedges coming back and all that.
Our guy.
But specifically on the payroll, he was honest. Listen, in Boston, he didn't care about payrolls because they had one of the higher payrolls. Right. But he says, yes, I don't think it's good for the game to have such a disparity, but what's the answer? There's no easy answer. It's very complicated, and it would take cooperation from players and owners that it's hard to find. But what did you guys think about what he said there?
When I hear him talk about it, you could tell he's frustrated. It frustrates him a little bit. And he says, well, he doesn't have any, really good ideas for it. I've always thought that, if there's one or two ways you can get players, you can either resign the guys you got, make trades, or draft players. If you're going to not have the same amount of payroll, you want to make things even, more equality and more even across the playing spectrum. What about giving, those teams who are under a certain threshold of payroll more picks, like more draft picks? Obviously, that will give you a better chance at creating and finding guys, because he talked about hit or miss. Like if we sign a guy and he turns out to be a mistake, then we got 2 or 3 years to deal with it. But if you had more bites at the apple and say, okay, well, these teams have more first-round picks or more chance to develop younger talent, then that would seem like that would kind of even it out. Yeah. And you have a better chance of identifying guys that you want to sign and lock up earlier, because that's the thing you can do.
The players would argue, well, if we give these teams that don't spend money more draft picks, then they'll just spend less money.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's hard to hear Terry Francona say, I don't have an answer, and then me give an opinion to an answer that if Terry doesn't know, then who the hell am I? But I don't think there should be a salary cap. There just be a salary floor.
I mean, there is a salary cap, by the way. It's very, very loose. It's easy around. It's not a cap. There's just penalties for going over.
I do think there should be a minimum amount that a team should be able to spend, has to spend. Now, I looked at the salaries from 2023. So I don't know what the projected payrolls for teams are for 2024, but I went back to 2023. And you have, obviously, teams spending a gajillion dollars like the Mets and the Dodgers. And then you have teams like Oakland and Tampa Bay and Cleveland spending, 60, 70. So I tried to figure out a number I thought would be fair. And I came to $110 million per team. That would have been 21st in Major League Baseball. Still in the bottom third of the league. But it wouldn't prohibit teams like L.A. or New York or Boston or these Chicago from spending as much money as they want. But it would make the bottom tier franchises have to spend enough money to at least be competitive. There are always outliers. The Rays somehow find a way year in, year out to spend $60 million and win 102 games. I don't know how it works.
Well, the Guardians are competitive year in, year out. They've had higher payrolls.
But I mean, as far as like the little payrolls. But I don't think you could say, well, just because this one team does it, everyone should be able to do it. They have some sort of secret sauce down there that no one else in Major League Baseball has been able to replicate to that extent. Other teams have had it in short spurts. The Royals did it earlier in the decade when they won a World Series. The Guardians have done it from time to time here, but not sustainable. But I do think by making a salary floor It would force owners who aren't willing or capable to spend the bottom line dollar to sell the team and bring in owners who could. I think that's good for the game. I don't think you need a $500 million payroll to win a World Series, but I do think you need to spend more than $50 million to compete on a year-in, year-out basis, and you owe it to the fans. So I don't think there should be a cap, but I do think a salary floor, and I picked 110. If you want to say it's a little too
I think it should be at least 130. I'd probably have it at 150.
Oh, you go even higher, okay.
But at least 130 should be the salary floor. There's no excuse for a team. 130 would be an average of $5 million per player. I mean, you got to be able to average at least $5 million per player.
Are there capital requirements for if I want to buy a team?
Yeah.
Are there capital requirements to say, listen, you can't be a millionaire, you got to be a billionaire if you want that?
I'm not 100% sure about that. I would assume that at this point they wouldn't bring in an owner unless you were super wealthy.
Yeah.
But some of the guys that are already in, I don't know if there was a rule at the time.
Yeah, like so if the Guardians are only going to spend even if they did have a capital requirement, you can't say, well, that's retroactive. Like, I'm already owner, I'm already here, so you can't tell me. But I think 130, 150 is good.
The problem, part of this, like as Terry pointed out, in football, there's revenue sharing. It's completely across the board. The Yankees make way more money than the Guardians do. There's nobody that's going to deny that. They have their own TV network. I get it. Nobody is expecting the Guardians to have a payroll as high as the Yankees, but it's got to be close enough that, and I can't remember if it was in that clip, but we talked about the fact that when the Yankees and Mets and Dodgers, and then to a little bit lesser degree, the Cubs, the Cardinals, some of these other teams, when they make mistakes, it's not necessarily the spending. Like, the Guardians have spent some money in some big contracts, but the Guardians can't make any mistakes. If you screw up when you sign Michael Bourne or Swisher or Josh Bell, it screws you. The Yankees and the Dodgers, if they sign a player, and they've done it, especially the Yankees, have signed big money contracts with guys and gave them nothing, but they can overcome it because they'll just spend more money. There's a limit. The Yankees don't, believe it or not, they've been affected by the penalties, or they've chosen to be affected. It's stupid. They don't need to be. They can afford to spend more. But they've been hesitant to go over some of the penalty numbers because they don't want to pay these extra penalties. So that's part of it but I think the expansion of the playoffs is a negative. I never liked it. And it's encouraging. It's easier to make the playoffs now in baseball. Now, it's still the hardest because the least amount of teams make it. But the more teams that are in, the less you're encouraged to spend because you're like, well, we're a middle-of-the-road team. Why do I need to spend an extra $20 million? I think we can make the playoffs anyway. And that's part of it. The salary floor is a big thing. There's no doubt it's a negative for the game. But ultimately, it would be worse. Like, let's say football had the baseball system, it'd be much worse in football. Because, and in basketball too. In basketball and football, the one great quarterback, the one great LeBron-type player makes much more of a difference than in baseball. Yeah. We've seen it. Mike Trout was the
Angels,
best. Was Mike Trout Shohei? Now, Trout's fallen off a little, but for a number of years, Ohtani and Trout were two best players in baseball, but the rest of the team stunk, so it didn't matter. One player cannot make up for, and that's why a team like the Guardians, who have won a ton of games, now ultimately you can say, well, they haven't won a World Series. Listen, a lot of that's luck and a crapshoot once you're in the playoffs. But the Guardians and Rays have won a lot of games because they've been run well, even with a low payroll.
Why don't they come up with a revenue sharing system that rewards teams like the Guardians or the Rays?
It should. Now, so there is a revenue sharing system, but it's not a huge enough. But the Guardians can spend more. They choose not to, and that's
if you had a revenue sharing system where it says, okay, the Guardians made it to the World Series, they get this absorbent amount of this pie.
Do teams get
pie and be like, hey, this is your reward, and now next year you can spend that money.
Do teams get playoff money like that? So in 2016,
the players do. The teams don't. But you get more revenue from the tickets. I mean, that's what you get.
They should have something where you because the incentive is, hey, if you're run correctly, we want to make sure that teams that are run correctly and are competitive and bring more money to the market.
Right.
They should be rewarded with something that they can then invest
but then
to make their teams better.
I would think you would have to do that with every team, though, because you don't want to just say, oh, if your payroll's under $150 million, you could get this bonus, because then that would encourage teams not to spend.
Right. Yeah. So it would be league wide.
Yeah.
But think about it. The Dodgers got so much money. Even if they did get that money, how much is that going to change?
I mean, the Dodgers spent more this offseason alone than the Guardians spent in the last decade.
What's fascinating in the end is because baseball is such a strange sport and so the hardest to predict, that the Dodgers, with all the money they've spent, have won one World Series in the last 36 years, and that was during the COVID year.
Yeah. Facts.
The Mets had the largest payroll in the history of baseball last year and did not make the playoffs. The Yankees had one of the top 3 payrolls, did not make the playoffs last year.
And the
Mets, in fact, have not won the World Series since 1986, and they don't spend like the Yankees traditionally. Now they got a richer owner, so they spend more. But money doesn't guarantee anything at all, but it helps you make up for mistakes. Yeah. And the Guardians, unfortunately, have made a lot of mistakes the last couple of years.
By the way,
that being said, Gavin Williams looked good yesterday.
By the way, Tito looked good, by the way.
He looked great.
Mike was saying that, too. He looked great. He told me and again, listen to the whole interview. He is. I said, am I calling it retirement? Like, would you come back? We didn't get into whether he would come back, but he's loving life. He's playing golf. He goes to Arizona basketball games. He is, and he's still part of the organization. But I said to him, are you staying away from the team now because you don't want to kind of overstep and let Stephen Vogt get his control of the team? He was like, absolutely. I didn't want to be around the team now.
Can I ask you 2 baseball questions because we got a second here?
Yeah.
First, Chase DeLauder.
He's not going to be on the team.
I know Jeff Passan put
Yeah.
he could potentially be the starting center fielder. I think he's jumping the gun, even though he's as plugged in as anybody.
Yeah, sure.
Is this guy the real deal? Is he finally the bat the Guardians have been waiting for?
He's highly touted, but the Guardians have had a lot of highly touted guys that have come to the majors and done nothing in recent years.
Why?
So I'm not going to. I like what I've seen from him. He's a good talent.
Could you tell me why?
But until he proves it in the majors, I don't want to.
Can you tell me why?
Well, I mean,
why won't he start in the majors?
He might not be ready. Part of it's contract. I think with him, they may feel like he's not ready for the majors yet. Remember, you got to take spring training numbers, especially early in the season, with a grain of salt. Because you don't know, like, I would have to go and look and see, who did Chase DeLauder get his hits off of? Did he get it off guys who were pitching an A-ball this year, or did he get it off Major League pitchers?
That's fair.
That's a big difference.
I would, listen, they don't got nothing to lose. I put him out there.
No, they do have something to lose, a year of his contract. Which is a BS answer.
That should not
but I'm just
be
telling you that.
It's a flaw in the game.
That should not be.
I have said for years, and they got. Don't listen to I'll give you numbers, but the numbers of years I'm giving you may not be the perfect number. It may need to be adjusted. But I've said for years that what they should do, the current rule is a guy can't become a free agent until after 6 years. But really, teams, especially the smaller market teams, have manipulated that to where you get a guy for 7 years because you don't bring him up until later.
And that's the
and that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's corny.
Which is crazy.
What I think they should do instead, and again, I don't know the exact number of years. I'd have to really do more research to find out the right exact number. What they should do is you have a guy for whether it's 9, 10, 11 years from the time you acquire him in either the draft or if he's a foreign player in free agency. You got a certain amount of years. Now, if it's a college player, you get less because he's older. If you sign a kid out of the Dominican at 16, you get more because, you don't want to see guys rush to the majors because, well, we only got him for 8 years. I got to get him the majors right away. And then, you can't put a 16-year-old kid in the majors. He's not ready to play. You got to figure out the exact numbers. But, like, in my mind, it was like, okay, if you draft a kid out of college, you got him for 8 years. You choose how much time he spends in the minors. You got him for 8 years. So whether he's in the minors, so then there would be none of that manipulation. And then it would be like 9 years out of high school or maybe 10 and 11 if you get him out of Latin America because he's 16 years old.
This is why all those great players that come from Japan or wherever they come that are studs, they don't want these studs going to these small market teams. Because they small-minded. Like, look, like Shohei, we get Shohei Ohtani to be like, nope, he's not pitching.
Well, the Japanese players, it's different because they're technically free agents when they come over.
Yeah.
So there's no clock to get started.
I don't get it. You have we always talk about these prospects. We always talk about them. And then they die in infamy.
The Guardians
in minors.
Yeah. The Guardians they've screwed up because they have these glut of prospects. Some of them have lost their value. They should have traded them some for better players. I don't know what happened. They paralyzed themselves. I don't know if they were scared to trade. Listen, they've traded away some good players. They blew it on Nolan Jones. I bet he becomes an all-star this year. Will Benson, I still got to see more, but he looked pretty good last year. The kid, Yainar Diaz, is going to be starting for the Astros as catcher.
Yeah.
Caminera is going to be starting for Tampa Bay this year. Yandy Diaz. Now, in Yandy's case, okay, that was a legit trade, but these other, they gave up Nolan Jones because for a 40-man roster spot.
For nothing.
And they never gave him an opportunity. Yandy at least played in the majors here for a while. And now I think after they've blown it on some of those, in the last year, I think they've been scared to pull the trigger on some other trades.
Well, let me ask you the second question then.
Yeah.
Jimenez is obviously a platinum glove at second base.
Yeah.
Unbelievable at second base. But none of the guys that they're trying out at shortstop have fully grabbed that spot by the horns yet. Any chance you think that Jimenez could slide from second to short, and then they give a little more oomph in the lineup with second base, whether it be an Angel Martinez who's come on really strong this spring or one of the other guys?
I think it's possible. I do.
Would you be for that?
Absolutely. But you got to start playing him at shortstop now. He came up as a shortstop.
They love Arias. They think he's the next guy.
But it's a new manager. So maybe they go with Rocchio, and Rocchio had a good season in the minors last year. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I know Miles Straw can't be the starting center fielder, I'll tell you that.
Well, Jason mentioned yesterday he thinks Tyler Freeman might be the guy
they've been using him in the outfield.
Who gets the start.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Florial. I still say they should either make a trade or go get a veteran outfielder, but it appears that ship has sailed.
So who's the everyday right fielder now?
That's still TBD.
I think it's probably going to be Laureano, who they got from Oakland.
Left field, Quan. Center field, Tyler Freeman.
I don't know what center field is. I think they're hoping Florial grabs the center field job because he was a big-time prospect, and he has dominated the minors. But in his limited opportunities with the Yankees, he did not perform. We'll see. I pay more attention to spring training now because now
you're starting to get the real pitchers.
Guys are starting going down in the minors. The pitchers are going to start going 3-4 innings, and we have a better feel. For the first couple of weeks of spring training, I'm paying attention, but I'm not locked in. Now I'm getting more locked in on the games.
I do have one more question, going back to the initial question we asked here. And there's probably a very obvious answer, I just don't know. Why isn't there a salary cap in baseball?
As the players never agreed to it. And the players union, unlike the players union in baseball, unlike the other sports, is strong. And back in the day when there were strikes every 5 years in like the 70s and 80s into the 90s when there was the last strike before the COVID strike, or COVID lockout technically. The players, that was one, they wouldn't budge. And they've always been a much stronger union than the other sports. I mean, think about it. The football players union always caves on these things. Always. That's why they're in this ridiculous spot where the running backs get screwed, where the franchise tag doesn't let players, football brings in the most money.
Now, I don't know the disparity between the top and the bottom. Is baseball the worst?
I'll pull you up the payroll.
Yeah, definitely.
I think in the NBA, league minimum, veterans minimum is way higher than all the other minimums.
Yeah. It's definitely the biggest difference, but I think you got to ignore Oakland because that's a messy situation.
Well, take out Oakland last season. This is based on 2023 for team payroll. The Mets team payroll last season, they missed the playoffs.
It's over $300 million, right?
$353.5 million.
What's payroll 5 compared to the Guardians?
Payroll 5, the Dodgers, $222 million in change.
Yeah.
The Guardians last year, $89 million, 25th in baseball. But then you look at a team like Baltimore. Baltimore, real quick, was 29th in payroll, and they won 100 games, didn't they?
Yes.
Close to 100
and
and
they're
made the playoffs.
going to be one of the best teams in baseball this year.
So it's possible. It's just
not. Yeah, of course. Listen.
Yeah.
The payroll doesn't guarantee you anything. The Rays have consistently won. The A's for many years had been not recently, or not too recently, but they had been good. There's a lot of those smaller market teams that have been good. But you have teams like the Pirates that have been bad forever.
Yeah.
and they're not getting better anytime soon. I was surprised they gave one of their young pitchers an extension. That was a big surprise.
Yeah.
I actually don't love it because I don't think he's that good.
And I have a really strange baseball question too that I was pondering in my head. Is it possible?
Yeah.
To teach a pitcher to be left-handed thrower and a right-handed thrower?
It is, but not once they're in the majors. You can't teach them at that. I shouldn't say that. I don't know that for sure. But that's something you'd probably learn as a kid.
So we got Ohtani, right? So he pitches and hits, right?
Yeah.
If, say, for instance, you were a left-hand pitcher and you could throw the ball almost 100 miles an hour with each hand.
It's happened, G. There's been a guy.
Well, he wasn't throwing 100.
But I'm saying he pitched from...
There was a guy, I can't even remember who it was, last year, I think, or the year before, who pitched both ways.
You have to declare it before the at-bat which hand you're going to pitch with. You can't switch. You can't throw one pitch lefty, one pitch righty.
But that's crazy though. But you could switch depending on lefty righty.
Yes,
and if say for instance he was like lights out. He was like the best left-handed pitcher.
Pat Venditti.
Yeah.
How much would he be worth if he was the best left-hand pitcher and the best right-hand pitcher in the league?
I mean, not as much as Shohei, but
I don't know. If you tell me,
but Shohei's one of a top 10 pitcher and a top 10 hitter.
So he would have to be. So before he would get 300, 400 million.
Yeah.
If he's like, I'm a top 3 lefty, top 3 righty.
Right.
500 mil.
I don't know that he wouldn't get that much because ultimately he still can only pitch once every 5 days.
Yeah.
But
400.
Do you think now? Think about it. He could throw theoretically without getting any arm damage. He could throw 140 pitches.
He could throw more pitches, sure.
Yeah.
This guy Pat Venditti, he didn't really pitch much in the majors. He wasn't that good.
He wasn't that good.
So it'd have to be a really good pitcher, but it's an interesting thought. Yeah.
And we got any super chats? And then if we don't, I got 2 things I want to mention.
I have one super chat.
He's got something, then one super chat, and then we'll give you mentions.
Yeah, so give me
just
one
go do
second
that real
here,
quick.
Mike. I just want to remind everybody that Earl's doing the Ultimate 216 tomorrow, and Earl actually has a full tease here for us to show. Once Steve pulls it up here, he's going.
Change the
picture.
picture.
Do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, so tomorrow I actually have my first ever guest on the Ultimate 216 show, a local Cleveland native stand-up comedian. He goes by B. Titty, man. Funny dude. Check it out.
Gotta add a repeat offender to the parlay ban list. We gonna call you Tyrese Halliburton. Cause Hallie burnt all my parlays the other day. I don't know what to do with you, bro. 0 points, 0 of 7, 3 assists. You had the same amount of points as the referee. You had the same amount of points as me, and I was at home sleep. Like, what is you doing? Do you not want to hoop? Are you a fashion model? I don't know, bro. You coming in here with these long pea coats dressed like Medea. Like, bro, I don't know what to do, bro.
Hey, shout out to that dude, Earl, because I had that same parlay.
He's funny.
With Tyrese Halliburton, how is that possible?
What happened?
Yeah.
These parlays be getting us, bro.
Earl, what time is the show? 5 or 6?
5 p.m. tomorrow, live.
5 p.m.
And Cavs tonight at 6.
Okay.
And let's get some super chats. I got 2 things
go ahead.
left.
Yeah, let me pull it up here real fast. Sorry about that.
Anthony slacking.
We have one. Yeah, no, that's a slack on me. From Scott A. He wants us to sign Tony Pollard, Shelby Harris, and Calvin Ridley, draft Wills and Batonio's replacements, and Lad McConkey, I think
He'll be gone by 54.
Lad will not be anywhere in the building.
I saw Dane Brugler, speaking of...
He had Alex Pearsall from Florida in his latest mock draft.
Right.
Yeah.
No. We do not
like
want him. This dude that wears a number 1, but he runs a 5'2". We do not want him at receiver.
5'2"?
No,
he doesn't want to run.
That's an exaggeration.
But it's exaggeration. But he be out here.
He's not fast.
But no.
He's not a burner.
He is.
No.
He is
so he's Cedric Tillman part 2.
He's regularo.
He's a good player, but not he's not the burner you would want to complement what you already have in the receiver. Okay, 2 things left.
Yeah.
One's draft related from Eddie. He sent me a question. One, the Cavs actually play tonight again, by the way. They play Atlanta.
Yeah.
Second night of a back-to-back.
Right.
We've talked about in the past, this is the stretch without Donovan in the game. He's injured.
Yeah.
Where, you got to figure out what Darius is, how to get him back to his all-star form. We assumed Evan Mobley would be part of this. He's out. Last night against Boston, even though they won the game, that's a really good defensive team. I didn't take any of the numbers too seriously. If he struggled, he played well. It was like it's Boston, most point guards struggle. Darius, if you're looking for a team that you can get your points, your assists, get your stats up to feel yourself feeling good moving forward, it's Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. That is some Olay defense they like to play down in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And I know on the second night of a back-to-back last week against Chicago, coming off the win over Dallas, we saw Andre Drummond have 26 rebounds. We saw Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan and Kobe White and Io DeSumo come out and kind of snatch their soul in a double overtime loss. As good as we feel right now about the Cavs coming off the win over the Celtics, they can't have another letdown performance tonight. They can't.
Well, Darius, man, if you're listening, man, don't throw the ball off the backboard in crunch time, bro.
Real quick, can I defend Darius for a second?
Go ahead.
That was actually a great read. Porzingis made an incredible play to tip it. My issue was why the hell is Darius Garland standing at the half-court line with 6 seconds on the shot clock? Bro. It actually wasn't a bad read on the pass to Allen, but with 6 seconds on the shot clock, if you're flat foot at half-court with no screen in sight, you probably ain't going to get a good shot. That was ugly. His other turnover, I got no defense for.
And you missed a free throw,
No defense for.
And you missed a free throw. You got to hit that and take a free throw. But, listen, I would just like to see swing. Listen, hey, if you ain't got – hey, Darius, so you dribbled the ball 3 times, you ain't got it, swing it. You get it back.
I saw a stat the other day that Luka Doncic, when the ball comes into his hands, holds it for 5.5 seconds per possession. It's number 1 in the NBA. Now, his usage rate's through the roof. They're on the whole offense through him. He does a lot of ISO.
He's playing LeBron
kind
role.
of to be expected. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, Jokic gets 100 touches per game, less than 3 seconds per touch.
Yeah.
Darius, and that's incredible. And Jokic is he's the best player in basketball. It's unquestioned. I don't care what Tyvus says. It's Jokic's league right now. Yeah. Darius is a lot closer to Luka in that time of possession per touch than he is to Jokic, which is a bit to be expected.
Not close in talent.
You said it, not me. Is to be expected for a point guard. You know, it's going to be higher. But
Are you not agreeing with that?
No, I mean, Luka is significantly better than Darius. It's not even a question. But my point is, I just want to see some quick decisions. You don't have to hold it for 5 seconds each time you touch the ball. Get it,
it's fascist basketball. Pass the ball.
Second thing, real quick. I got a question from Eddie I wanted to bring up because we got 2 minutes here.
Yeah.
Eddie said, what's up, Eddie? Where you at? Shout out to Eddie. If the Browns trade back in the draft, do you think they would look at Joe Milton as a backup quarterback?
They're not drafting a quarterback. I'd be very surprised this year.
Yeah, they got DTR last year. That I wouldn't waste no
I'm
money.
not.
But Joe Milton, by the way, he gets
all the ball 700 yards.
I mean, he's one of those quarterbacks now. He had a great opportunity in Michigan. He was supposed to be the guy in Michigan. He flamed out there. He lost the kind of job a little bit to the one kid that was playing last year at Tennessee.
Nico Iamalelela, whatever his name is.
You know what's funny is, and you know this, G. Mike, you don't know this, but
why do I know this?
Well, because you weren't here.
Oh.
So Earl will know this too. From my first year covering the Browns, 2011, until they drafted Baker in 2019.
Draft a quarterback every year.
They didn't draft a quarterback every year, but for all those years, Baker was 18. Sorry. So from 2011 till through 2018, every year we were having a conversation about drafting a quarterback.
Every year.
Every single year. And right, I mean, and certainly, and even before that, even before
2011, we was talking about
right. But even before that, but pretty much every year was part of the conversation. And we really have not had that conversation since Baker got drafted, because even when some of us like G and I were off Baker, we weren't really talking about drafting a quarterback at that point. But, and I hope it doesn't come to this, if Deshaun Watson has a terrible season, we're talking about it next year for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it'll be the first year that.
Because they'll have a first-round pick for the first time in a while, and you're going to have – if he has a bad year, and again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't want to really take us down this road. I just thought about it for a second. That'll be a big part of the conversation next year.
Well, they drafted DTR in the fourth or fifth. I don't think anybody's expecting them to draft a quarterback.
They always could.
And he was the best player on the board. I mean, he looked great in the preseason. I thought he actually took a step forward when he got a chance to play against Denver.
Where's this guy going to get drafted?
Milton?
Yeah.
Late round.
Mid to late round.
Day 3 pick.
Yeah.
Well, if he can throw it 70 yards, why is he so late being drafted?
Decision-making, accuracy.
Yeah, everything else
sucks.
In the Orange Bowl last season, he threw an orange 117 yards.
But he did ball in the Orange Bowl.
He did.
He killed. They
put up some big numbers.
But
117 yards.
Did you see the video of him at the combine where he threw it and then he threw like 70 yards and as he's walking back, he finds the camera and goes, right as the guy caught it. It was a sick video.
They cheating, by the way, too. That COVID year, everybody 28 coming into the league. Listen, everybody 29 years. I'm like, dang, how long do you play?
It's a very old draft class.
These dudes is old.
But this is the last year. This is the last year of the COVID seniors.
Yeah, right. Pennick's been playing 10 years. I see them play 3 years for
Well,
COVID.
If you were a freshman,
2020.
I guess you're right.
I think so. Maybe I'm asking
Maybe it's
off,
one more year. All right, that's it. We'll see you on Overtime on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
Peace.